enrich, they will become places of instruction chaos and will ultimately act out. The solution given at our information meeting last week was that we would have our PE equipment, which at this time consists of balls and hula hoops. We were also told that our kids would have access to basketball hoops, which the majority of our younger grades cannot access due to their height and motor skills. And then we would have possibly some tether balls. This is not an acceptable solution. Putting children in a field on a daily basis for an entire academic year with balls and hula hoops is unacceptable. We currently have situations where soccer is taken away from the kids during recess and lunch times because the children are not getting along, cooperating, or playing nice. How is that going to work at our new site when all they have are balls to play with? We also have been told that our children will not have access to computers. This is also unacceptable. Our children rely on technology to learn and compete with the growing world around them. Studies show that children do not have access to technology, show lower test scores and attention progression. Our kids use their computers on a daily basis and need those things in place in order to make it. So, you put our children in a school for an entire academic year without their technology, you are going to see regression. I really wish that you will consider and reconsider these plans and make sure that our children's needs are first. It is your job to make sure that our kids are getting the best education possible. Thank you.
Jenny Winters.
I brought props. My name is Jenny Winters, and I am a parent, I am a PTA member, I am a fellow College U alumni myself, and I cannot speak more highly than my fellow family members here have about College U. I love you guys. I have worked so hard to ensure that my children can grow up in this district, and I'm very proud of the work you've done. With that being said, I really appreciate the opportunity to address the board tonight, and I have three main issues that I would like to speak on. Number one is the playground issue, the lack of playground. The second is the lack of computer labs. And the third concern I have is for the technology and the smart board technology that's going to be in place in the classrooms at our new site. It is my understanding that College U is unique in their situation, that we are going to be the only school that is going to be a portable city. We're going to have portable bathrooms, no computer labs, and no playgrounds. And this is very upsetting to me based on how I feel. I would never want to leave my school, but these are things that force me to consider a move. So I've lost myself, sorry. So with all of this taking place on just our school, I think that to put a playground in place on a site that's going to be used for 9 years down the line, it's not just going to benefit our school, it's going to benefit all the schools. And it is my understanding that the equipment there is not suitable for young age children. So I would just like my kids to have the opportunity to get their sillies out at recess, come in and focus on some learning. I look at it as an investment, and I really hope you guys can as well. It's almost a decade-long project, and everyone will benefit. The computer labs are very vital to our school. Many of our children don't have access to computer at home, and as they've said, we have 2 computer labs, and they are always being used. You will never walk down a hall and it's empty. And I want my children to have the same opportunities at the next year's school as they have at this school. I'm also concerned with issues of the computer lab because it makes me concerned about the timeline of the testing and when our students will have to start testing and how that will affect our scores and our state funding as well. So I want to be reasonable, and I think some compromises can be made. And I have great respect for you and the board and Dr. Hanson and Dr. Conroy, and I am respectfully asking the board to direct the attendants to please put in an age-appropriate playground, ensure that our kids have access to technology, and that our smart boards and our teachers' tools are maintained so that they can properly teach. A classroom should not dictate how our children learn. So, thank you. And they have one thing they want to say.
We want computer labs. Please. We want a playground. Please.
Are you familiar with our downloadable typing programs for your children?
I have, and the Type to Learn, is that what you're referring to?
We have three.
Okay, yeah, no, I was more concerned with the AR program, which our school funds, RAS Kids, and STMAP, and the access that they'll have to that. So, and the downloadable programs won't really help our kids without computers. So, thank you for your time.
Chuck Johnson.
Good evening, my name is Chuck Johnson. Trustee Carmen, on February 19th, 2018, you staged a rally for gun control in the wake of the Parkland shootings. After identifying yourself as a trustee of the Ocean View School District, you made the following statement. I've laid down on the floor with my students for lockdown too many times. I've huddled on the ground, holding my breath in silence, lights out, with my heart pounding, with 35 scared kids because there was a gunman on campus. This is real. It has happened to me. Calls and CPRA requests to both ABC Unified School District and the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department indicate you're lying and using the tragedy of the Parkland shooting in order to advance your personal political agenda. I wrote to you twice, asking for specific details. You never responded. You referred to my published piece on my blog as illegitimate, as if that somehow nullifies the truth of what I've researched and published. My illegitimate blog received close to 20,000 hits on the piece that I wrote in the last week. Hardly illegitimate. Over the weekend of March 3rd and 4th, you elected to double down yet again in the hopes that you could persuade your ardent supporters that my expose was all a right-wing plot. You provided no specific details, dodged the question, and spoke in broad generalizations in an attempt to deflect the subject. You actually helped me to narrow down the search parameters required to disprove your lies. You managed to disparage the city of Hawaiian Gardens in a miserable attempt to squeeze out of your web of lies. Thank you for that. On social media, you stated that the Hawaiian Gardens PD handled the cases. They were formed in February 1995 and disbanded and replaced by the Lakewood Sheriffs in 1997. I'll give you one last opportunity to respond to my emails and give me specific date ranges that can be researched. If you think you can simply continue to discredit me, feel free to do so. I intend to research every possible explanation for your statement. You're a disgrace to this district. You bring shame on your colleagues. Trustee Souders, when are you going to step up and take control of this board? Harvin's actions require a censure. And do you still support a walkout by the students on April 20th? Thank you.
Okay, Peyton Winters.
She was supposed to go with me.
Okay. All right. John Briscoe.
I'm here tonight to invoke, if you would bow your head or prepare yourself, as is your custom. God grant us your wisdom, your good graces, your guidance, and good humor as we work on behalf of the residents of the Ocean View School District tonight. Amen.
Clerk, Clayton Turner, are there any more speakers?
No, there's not.
All right, thank you. For the speakers from College View, I just want to let you know that I've written down all of your comments and concerns, and I'm going to make sure that they get passed on to the superintendent and addressed. And I appreciate you attending tonight's meeting and letting us know exactly how you're feeling and what your concerns are.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That moves us to L, communications. L1, written communications to the board. Superintendent?
So why was he excluded?
Mr. Johnson, can you have a seat? And
Yeah, Mr. Epting was included.
You're disrupting the meeting.
Chris Epting was excluded from public comments.
If you would have a seat. Thank you. Written communications to the board, Superintendent?
Yes, we have copies for the public if they wish to request it. There was 5 written communications from Chris Epting.
L2 board committee reports, Superintendent? Mr. Epting?
I wasn't allowed to speak.
You're gonna have to wait till later public comments.
My card was turned in.
You're disrupting the meeting right now. It was turned in after 6 o'clock. So
It was turned in by Chuck Johnson.
you can't, it has to be turned in by the person. So if you want to wait till the end, we'll be more than welcome to wait. Or on an agenda item.
Point of order, President Souders.
Thank you. I think we've taken care of the situation. Thank you. Superintendent, board and committee reports?
No reports received.
Thank you. That brings us to L3, trustee communications. Let's start with you, trustee Briscoe.
I'd like to draw the audience's attention to your rights. Under California state law, what's called the Williams Act, if the equipment and materials provided for your children are not adequate in your opinion or not sufficient, you have a right and responsibility to file a Williams Act complaint with the district, which must then be published and investigated. We haven't started the school, we haven't started the over program, so it would be a bit early to submit a complaint for something that's not there yet. But if you're not satisfied next year with the program that we provide for your children at the temporary housing, please use the Williams Act form. It's a very serious matter, and it must be investigated and the issues answered, and it's published for everybody to see. Also, I want to remind the audience that the 4 trustees up here in front of you, elected by the people, by you, we're all volunteers. We don't get paid for this. We're volunteers working on your behalf. People think I get paid, and I don't. Last, the City of Huntington Beach provides no safety for the rest of the children at Huntington Beach City School, Fountain Valley, or Westminster School District. They've refused to provide safe school routes mapping. Our district insisted on our statutory right from California State to have maps. And I'm just curious, how many in here have seen those great school route mapping safety things? It tells you how the safest way to get from your house by razor, by bike, or by walking to the local school of enrollment for the neighborhood you live in. I found out we're the only district that they did the work for. The other school districts got nothing, even though I asked for that safe school routes mapping for them. This city government, the city council, under Mayor Posey, and the city manager under Fred Wilson, could care less about children's safety. I would like to draw the attention of our administration to the responsibility of Westminster to provide us with safe school routes mapping for our children at Westmont. And I won't, I'll ask later, but President Souders, I'd like to know if we have written that letter yet to Westminster City demanding our right to safety for our children at Westmont, and have we written that letter yet to the Orange County, the County of Orange, for the Midway City students? Because both of those agencies are required by law to provide our children with safety, with safe school routes mapping, and they have yet to do that. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. Trustee Westphal?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to announce that after our last meeting, we decided to appoint an interim trustee to replace Mr. Gaglione, who has resigned. I had since called on the phone Dr. Ralph Bauer, and he's expressed an interest that he's willing to serve in that capacity, and I believe he'll be shortly turning in an application for that. I think he'd probably be a good candidate for this. He's a former mayor and former president of this very body, so I look forward to moving forward in that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Clayton-Tarver?
Well, welcome this evening, first and foremost, and I want to thank the College View parents for coming here tonight and letting us know about your concerns. I had heard about the concerns. I have contact with some of you. I really didn't realize exactly what was happening, and now that I do, I definitely am listening to you and want to fix what needs to be fixed, because as a 22-year teacher, I can tell you that I understand that if recess is taken away from students or they don't have exactly the recess that they should have by having equipment and balls to play with, you're right, it really does cause issues because they need to get their energy out. I hear you, and I promise you we're going to fix this. I do want to talk a little bit about I think it was a parent that came at the beginning talking about school safety. I think many of you know school safety is literally at the top of my list of priorities for the Ocean View School District. And I wanted to let you know that in my 22 years of teaching, I taught 10 years in Hawaiian Gardens. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Hawaiian Gardens and what goes on there. But I can tell you that what was said here earlier by one of the public speakers is actually inaccurate, because I have many times, countless, couldn't tell you how many, have had to shelter with the kids on the floor, shelter in place, because of lockdowns. Many lockdowns.
Can we get up order out there, please? You have your turn to speak.
Many lockdowns, many times, shooters on campus from gang activity that spilled over onto the campus. And I wanted to read to you from one of my colleagues. I worked with Gina during this same time period. Not only is what Gina's saying true, but she's not even mentioning several other incidents that we've had with people with knives and other weapons looking to cause problems. I still work at this school. Our campus is much more secure, and we have regular visits by the local sheriff's deputies. But even with these increased safety measures, we still have incidents. Just this year alone, we've had 2 incidents with students bring guns on campus, and we have students falsely report students planning on shooting up the school. Ladies and gentlemen, I know it's LA County and it's Hawaiian Gardens, but I can tell you these things occur, and I'm going to make sure that we put in the best safety measures in the Ocean View School District to protect and safeguard our children. I whether it be bulletproof glass, I am for it. Metal detectors, I am for them. Security cameras, I am for them. Even security on campus, an officer, I am for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a little out of control. We have to remember at all times, I know the debate can get a little bit heated, but we do have children in the room today, and I would appreciate everyone here keeping a cool head, and especially watching any kind of foul language and refraining from using foul language. I will ask that you be removed if you're going to curse at the school board meeting. It's just not acceptable around young kids. It's not acceptable in school. That being said, there are 2 times for public speaking. It's at the beginning and the end of the meeting. All you have to do is turn in a blue card in person at the beginning of the meeting and hand it over to the secretary, and you will be afforded the opportunity to speak. If you want to speak during an agendized item, you can indicate that on the blue card, and you will be allowed to speak on the agendized item as well. We are not trying to limit free speech in any way whatsoever. We encourage it. We just need to have it in an orderly fashion. That being said, I think that it's. I think I can safely say that it is the desire of all of the board members, or one of our primary functions here at the school is to keep the children safe. We want to make sure that, and we know that children don't learn if they're not in an environment that's safe. So I think that would be, I feel safe saying that that is one of the primary concerns of every board member here, is making sure that our children have a safe place to learn, first and foremost. So I would echo a lot of the comments of the other trustees. As far as Trustee Westwell was mentioning, he is correct. We are missing. We have an empty space over here. We are going to be taking some candidacy requests. Stay tuned and listen to the board, some of the stuff that goes on at the board meetings, to find out a little bit more information about how we're going to do that. If you've ever been interested in being part of public service, this is a great opportunity. You want to have a voice in the district. I encourage you to submit a candidacy form and try to get in the district, even if it's for a short interim period. It will give you invaluable experience. There is a quick learning curve. Take it from me. I'm telling you right now. But it's exciting, and it is, you're being a public service, so I would encourage anyone out there who has an interest in that to maybe take the chance and put in a candidacy form. As far as College View parents are concerned, I too have heard you, and I will make sure that the superintendent understands exactly what your concerns are. I usually take copious notes. Most of my notes come from public speaking, and I write down all the concerns person by person, and I have all of them written down. And I will make sure that those get passed along, and I really appreciate you guys coming and your concerns. Sometimes we need the extra eyes. I think this is part of the process of governance, is that we need the extra eyes in the community, and we really appreciate you coming here and letting us know your opinions and your concerns. So I want to thank you for that. And I'm going to end there. I'm still getting over a cold, so you'll hear me breathing heavily here and there. And I'm going to bring us to L4, Superintendent's Communication.
Well, good evening. What a pleasure it was to hear our district honor band and have them perform for us tonight. Last week, we were fortunate to have the All District Music Festival, which had all of our middle schools, whether it be orchestras or band or choirs or dance teams or show choirs, all perform, and it was a fabulous event. And I commend our board for continuing to make music and dance and the arts a priority. I also want to share some information about our board vacancy. The board did vote to move towards a provisional appointment. We are seeking applicants. We've advertised in the Orange County Register. We are advertising on our website, and there should be a flyer at each of our schools. The deadline for turning in the application is March 16th. Then we will hold a special board meeting where the interviews will be conducted in public, and then the final will be made that evening, March 27th. Tonight, the board will select a subcommittee of board members who will serve as screeners for the applications. That's for our bylaw 923. I'll have the pleasure of attending a wonderful assembly at Oakview last week, where the Assistance League of Huntington Beach participated in what's called their Legacy of Literacy event, and they donated over 50 books to our Oakview students. It was just wonderful. I also had the pleasure of attending last week a labor management event, our first what we call OVSD and CSEA, that's our classified employees, PAL, Partnership with Administration and Labor Squared retreat. And we had over 43 classified employees and managers come together to learn about partnership work. We had guest speakers from ABC Unified and Fullerton Elementary School District. We participated in activities and team building and just learning general information and coming to some agreements about how labor and management will work among the classified ranks. I'd like to thank our Assistant Superintendent Felix Avila, CSEA President Jason Bozarth, Principal Jason Blade, Food Service Director Jim Reiner, Supervisor Ken Slack, CSEA Vice President Kathy Operud, CSEA Chief Union Steward Mike Coker for all participating in the planning committee for this wonderful event. And thank you for Trustee Clayton Tarbin for stopping by. We really do appreciate it. The whole issue of school safety has been mentioned here tonight. I want you to know on behalf of our entire cabinet, school safety continues to be a priority. And we want to assure you that we have safety plans prepared. Our staffs regularly practice drills with the students. And if you have any concerns about how we are addressing or preparing for unfortunate situations or emergency situations, I urge you to please contact us. We recently published a newsletter where we highlighted the safety measures that we take in Ocean View. But if you have other suggestions or ideas, we always welcome them. I appreciate the comments that the College View community made tonight, and we will be taking those under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. L5, PTA, PTO, PTSA, PTSO, President's Roundtable. Do we have a representative from, we'll start with, well, that's would be one representative. Do we have anyone here representing those groups? I don't see her in the audience. Okay, we will move on. L6, Employee Associations, Communications, CSEA and OVTA. How about we start with OVTA this time?
Oh, gosh. The less I look at.
Hi, trustees, cabinet, Margaret Friedman, OVTA's, Ocean View Teachers Association president, and parents don't know. And I really want to commend all the parents for coming out and speaking so eloquently tonight, preparing your speeches and eloquently outlining your concerns. I know that we are a school district that values community input, and also teacher input and employee input, and we work together, and it's really made a difference in this school district over the last 3 years with our new cabinet, and I truly appreciate it. So you guys will, I think, see, as I've watched, we had a task force last year talking about the move, and there were lots of recommendations made, and the cabinet and the district went back to the table along with the board and made changes. So I just know that speaking out tonight was very important, and I really appreciate it because it's for all of us. And thank you, parents and community. Next, I just also want to absolutely commend this year's middle school honor band. I was sitting right there, right next to them, and the music was just beautiful. And I am super proud of the students, but I'm also really proud of the dedication of our teachers that year after year after year go above and beyond to make sure that these kinds of special programs for the arts happen. And they do this, a lot of them, through stipend positions. The stipend positions for our teachers have not been addressed in over a decade. So this is something that is being addressed, and I'm glad that it is. I'm excited too. We have Lisa Wellis here, who is serving with me on the teachers end of the year banquet, and we're gonna have a banquet that is along with our classified staff and our the management staff and the teachers. We're all going to come together on June 1st to really celebrate the year and the employees, and I really think that that is a wonderful thing too. Thank you.
Call that CSEA.
Oh, geez.
Good evening. My name is Jason Bozarth. I am the CA president. I was thinking about starting off with a preamble of the Constitution, but I thought that might be inappropriate. But first thing that I would like to do is I would like to also add my commend the parents of College View for coming out tonight. This is really the way that it's supposed to happen. This is the system working, and it gives me a great deal of hope. It reassures me that we also have a community engagement and that this is the right way to do it. And I know that you as a board will listen, so once again, I commend you and I thank you for coming out. Also, I would like to just say, wow, that honor band, wasn't that amazing? That still blows me away. So, chapter updates. It's the top of the month, so we were at the March 1st Classified Power Retreat, or PAL2 as we're calling it. The nice thing about it is that it started a lot of conversations that really needed to happen. In the past, a lot of supervisors and classified staff, they had this almost kind of cartoonish caricatures in terms of like how they viewed each other. And when you are able to interact in that way and start developing that communication and the ties of that sort of event, what that starts to build is it starts to build a perception of the other that it moves beyond these caricatures, and it makes you aware that we're not talking about your supervisor, you're talking about a person. You're talking about a person that has likes, dislikes, has feelings, and it starts conversations that frankly needed to happen, and I was very, very reassured and pleased to see them start to happen. One of the things that the visiting speakers mentioned that I thought was kind of odd, but yet at the same time rather reassuring, he basically mentioned how you seem to really like one another, as if though that was kind of an odd thing. That struck me as kind of odd, because A, it speaks to the relationship that we already had in some level, but it also spoke very much to the kinds of relationships that exist between classified and supervision outside of this district. So I consider myself very lucky and very fortunate that we do have supervision and administration that is willing to work with us and develop those kind of relationships. And I look forward to it moving forward. Elizabeth Carr has been elected as our e-board second vice president. We are currently looking for a treasurer. So, Mike Conroy, if you, Dr. Conroy, if you basically, are interested, I have to try to set you up. I can't guarantee for the benefits, but something to think about. Let's see. Also, the OVSD, and as Margaret mentioned, the OVSD employee banquet is on June 1st. Of course, the board is invited. It's going to be a very special event this time around because we are having so many retirees this year. In many ways, and for many departments, it is going to be kind of the end of an era. We're talking about maintenance and grounds. We're losing, I shouldn't say losing, but retiring most of the really old guard that have been around forever. So it's going to be an interesting event. And like I said, it is going to be the end of an era in many ways for several departments. So I would like to thank the committee for all of its hard work in putting this together. And as I said, I would like to extend that invitation to the board for this event. I would also like to address the Trustee Gaglione. We are greatly saddened by his departure. And as I said in the previous emergency meeting, I have nothing but respect and admiration for Joseph Gaglione. I wish him only the best and success in his future endeavors. And I have faith that the board will appoint someone with the same kind of calm, no-nonsense, refreshing manner about him or her that essentially can look to these matters and look to the school district and give it the proper attention and needs that it deserves. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to M, reports. M1, construction update, fencing board direction. Superintendent?
Thank you. In just a couple of minutes, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Dr. Conroy, our Deputy Superintendent. Previously, we've had some discussions here at the board meetings during construction updates and reports, and also at special community forums about shall we fence our schools or not, and what type of fencing we should have at our schools. This has, of course, you heard about concerns about safety tonight from individuals and at many of our meetings. So we thought it was important that we had a presentation just about specific topics related to fencing, whether we should fence or not, fence the perimeter or not, and what type of fencing we should use. So we have brought some options to you tonight. You've seen some of these options before. We've narrowed them from our previous meetings. And what we need from you tonight is some direction that we're on the right path and some recommendations. We have some recommendations for you, and we're going to need to know if you like those recommendations, because then in the end we will bring those back for you to approve. So then when we go out to bid for our projects in the future, we'll know how to direct our construction managers appropriately. Okay, so take it away, Dr. Conroy.
President Souders, trustees, Superintendent Hanson, cabinet, staff, and community. I would like to just make a side comment that appreciate the College View community coming tonight. Had an opportunity to present to them last week, presentation and a spirited question and answer session, and I'm glad they were able to come tonight. I want to go back in time when the board established these project goals and mission statements that guides why we do what we do. We want to make sure that we complete all our construction in the safest possible manner. And that was what spurred on the topic of in-home housing. We want to complete all construction with the least amount of disruption or inconvenience to the educational process. And I understand the concerns that were addressed earlier this evening. We want to complete all the construction in the most efficient and economical manner in order to maximize return on our investment. And that's using our funds in a wise manner. We want to maximize control of the construction process by minimizing the potential problems and enabling more solutions should problems materialize. And we want to be proactive. We want to manage the project rather than the projects manage us. And finally, we want to complete all work as quickly as possible, and all projects are planned to be completed within one school year. I've shared in the past that all our projects need to balance the scope, design, constructability with budget, and just want to really define what does scope mean, and that's the district's responsibility to define what the scope is. What is the project going to entail? The design is what our design professionals, the architects, take what scope we provide in direction, and they design the project. The constructability is reviewed by the construction manager that what the architect is designing can be constructed. And then we all manage that with our the proceeds that we get from Measure R to make sure that we've got the proper cash flow and that we're properly phasing our projects. So tonight, the purpose of tonight is to review the fencing topic. As Dr. Hanson mentioned, we'll review some fencing types, the fencing of exterior, interior, and kind of give you some discussions on those. At the end of the meeting, tonight we'll review the options. As Dr. Hanson mentioned, we will provide you with staff recommendations and kind of where we're looking at the next board meeting for the board to provide us that direction so that we can go out to bid with the trades. And we'll be talking about interior and exterior fencing, the perimeter of the schools, and specific, and the perimeter of those schools that have pocket parks adjacent to them if we put a fence on the property line. So the two types of fencing we're narrowing this down to will be chain link fencing and tubular steel picket fencing. And these are the styles. These do not represent anything in Ocean View. They're just pictorial representations of chain link fence and tubular steel. So the chain link, there are three options. We have 2-inch, which is most common chain link fencing. A 1-inch mesh, it's a tighter square, so to speak, a little more difficult to maneuver up a 1-inch as opposed to a 2-inch. And then we have PVC coating, and that's the PVC plastic coating that you have on chain link fence, and typically that's on the 2-inch mesh. So when we look at 2-inch mesh, it is most economical, most common chain link fence, and the pricing is $105 per linear foot installed. That includes the concrete low curb, the poling, the installation, the labor, everything to install the fencing per linear foot. So this gives you another idea of what I'm specifically talking about when you look at a chain link fence as a model of fencing. The 1-inch chain link, again, it's economical. It's $135 per linear foot installed, and it's a little tidier appearance than the 2-inch. So this is what the view that you get, but again, it's more industrial looking. The PVC is a PVC coated mesh. It gives you a variety of color options to blend in with whatever the color scheme of a school is, and that price is a little bit higher, $170 per linear foot. So this will give you a kind of idea, depending on the color, what you may use. And this happens to be black. Interestingly, though, black is a common color for fencing because from a visual perspective, you actually see through the black to the background in the background, whether it's a school, park, whatever it may be, often used for fencing colors. Second type of fence is tubular steel picket panels. We're looking at panels in between the post when you have damaged fencing, you're able to take out a panel and replace it as opposed to doing a saw cut and then having to come back in and weld different parts of the fencing. It's much more economical, and it is much more popular installation model. So these are two examples of tubular steel. We're looking at the features of this, color options, a variety of colors, and when we get to the selections and to the schools, we'll be looking at color palettes for the construction and the colors of the school, the interior, the exterior, as well as the fencing. That will be all part of the color palette that we will be presenting. I mentioned the panel replacement, and it's much more difficult to climb a tubular steel than it is a chain link fence because there's no place to grip. Price installed is $210 per linear foot installed. So at Westmont, this is the code. The green represents the chain link that would be remaining. So the long boundary along the riverbed there is chain link, and that is proposed to stay. Where the colored lines of red will be chain link with a mow strip, concrete mow strip. The blue lines represent the tubular steel panel. The orange is masonry block wall on the street side. That would be by the kindergarten area to be the preschool area. And then the orange is masonry block walls on the east property line where the community homeowners live. At Westmont, the green is the chain link to remain, and the college. What did I say? College view, excuse me. And the green is two places at the bottom of the extended parking lot, and then on the south side, which would be the right side, is the gate to the access to the community. The red is interior, and that is chain link with a mow strip, and that you can see in the middle to the upper end of the building. That would be the proposed new kindergarten play area. And then you have tubular panel steel, which is the blue, which you see on the exterior of the campus, along the street side and on the around the parking lot area. And then the tubular steel up on the top as the property line boundary between the Pocket Park and the school. That Pocket Park at College is a city-owned park, not a school district-owned park. So staff recommendations for fencing exterior to go with the tubular steel panel system, 8 feet in height. On the interior, chain link 2-inch at 6 feet in height. And then to fence the perimeter of the school adjacent to the pocket parks with the tubular steel panel system, 8 feet in height. So the next board meeting, there will be a specific agenda item on fencing. The district will be seeking the direction, approval from the board as to interior fencing, exterior fencing, and the perimeter fencing issues. And that concludes my report.
Rusty Briscoe, you have the floor.
And the microphone. I have some questions for you, Dr. Conroy. I saw the, prevailing wage. Are these prices per foot based on prevailing wage payments where plumbers helpers get $85 an hour?
It's prevailing wage.
Prevailing wage. So if we used our own staff, would that be possible?
Well, this would be something that we go out to the bid. We could do our own staff, but when we start to look at the integration of our staff with construction projects, it becomes a rather difficult issue in terms of the work that staff currently have to do, in terms of their work and pulling them off district jobs to do construction. That's why we typically go out to a construction project for bidding.
Do we have plans to look at that option and compare pricing?
We have not.
I would like to see that option. I'd like to see Jason and his crew have an expanded crew, or even if it's temporary for a couple of years while we're working on these things. Okay, the concrete mow strip. I saw a picture with a fence with a piece of concrete underneath that. Is that the mow strip?
Similar to a mow strip, yes.
I don't know what similar means.
Now, depending on the length, the mow strip is typically going to be about 4 inches wide, depending on the depth, but it's typically a concrete strip that is underneath the fencing.
How much does that add to the fence cost on the tubular stuff?
I don't have that available tonight.
Is the trade-off for long-term ease of maintenance versus the cost of initial install sufficient then to pay for that extra cost?
Yes, and if Mr. Choate, or actually, I'm going to have Chris Meyer from Desmond Meyer, our construction manager. You could probably more appropriately address that. So, Chris, if you'd like to come up.
Sure, that mow strip would be 18 inches wide. Okay, it's 4 inches thick, and it runs about $20, $15 to $20 a foot. It's non-reinforced concrete. The purpose of it is it creates a cleaner line, keeps the weeds from growing up in the fence, and aids in the maintenance. Typically in school districts, when we put in a chain link fence, if it doesn't already run across concrete or asphalt, we put a mow curb.
Well, our staff would never let weeds grow up around our fences.
I don't
but
know.
thank you. That answers my question. Thank you. Single ingress and egress. And while we're doing all this work with mow strips and concrete, wiring ingress and egress points for future, for electrification, for proximity readers, what are our plans for this, for safety and security on the campuses? In other words, when I look at the Westmont campus, I see one place to come and go. That's through the front door that we're going to tear down that beautiful pergola and put up a new pergola. And no other places where people should be coming and going except in the back parking lot, which is not really safe. What have we done to reduce and control our ingress and egress?
Can you be a little bit more specific?
In our fencing plans, I would like to see a focused effort to limit the ingress and egress to one spot, maybe 2 spots where we eventually could put in proximity readers for an ID badge or fob. And later, if need be, metal detectors. I don't see that need in our elementary school district, but who knows? If we don't wire and plan for these things now, we're wasting an opportunity. If we don't plan our design so that the access is limited to one spot where somebody can look and see who's coming and going, including adults and parents and volunteers, we're wasting an opportunity.
Well, I can't address the proximity readers or other electronic devices. I was prepared to only speak about fencing. However, the fencing plan does, for both College and Westmont, is a funnel to the front office, have a single point of entry onto the campus where the school office can control who comes onto campus and provide the issue that you're talking about, the ingress and egress, through one point of entry into the office and onto the school campus.
Okay, thank you. We do have unique situations on our Circleview campus where there's a neighborhood ingress egress, city-owned concrete 10-foot wide walkway that children and families use to enter our campus directly. Do we have plans for places like that where there might even be an ingress egress place on College?
On College, if you look at the map on the right-hand side, you'll see the green bar. There currently is a chain link gate that currently exists now. That will be part of the system of locking it during the school day.
And, okay. Well, there's other options. We could put more of those gizmos that has those spiky fingers where you can't get through except a person. So this green bar over there is that ingress egress into the nearby neighborhood.
That's correct.
And then last, I don't see the bike cage on the Westmont. Where's the bike cage on the Westmont plan?
I don't think there is one right now.
Oh, is there a bike cage on the College View plan? Because there is a bike cage at College View now.
I don't know where it currently exists, so I can't address that right now.
The safety and security of our students' property is very important to me. And their bikes need to be locked up and secured in a real bike cage that has real height and safety and security to it. So I would advocate and request that your office and the architects look at our bike cages to make sure that they are fully and maximally secured with highest possible fences around the outside and maybe even fences over the top. and gates that are easily locked and unlocked by staff so the bikes can be secured during the day. There is a bike cage at College View for sure. I don't see it on here.
That is not the detailed fencing plan of the campus, so I can't address the bike cage issue, but I know that our architect is here and we'll take that into consideration, have that discussion at our next
I'd
construction.
like to strongly urge and request that the bike cage problem be addressed on each and every campus, along with all the other fencing, because the bike cage problem is a fencing problem.
I hear you, and we'll address that at next meeting.
Thank you. That concludes my comments, President Saunders.
Thank you. Trustee Clayton Tarman, you have the floor.
So first and foremost, I want to say that I actually like the way it's designed currently, the way you're going to leave some of the chain link in like at Westmont, because that butts up to the flood channel.
Yes.
And so I don't think that needs to be changed. I like that the tubular steel panel or the ornamental iron is there in the front so that the school has a good curb appeal. I think that's really important for when you buy a home in a neighborhood. You want the school to look really inviting and so forth, and not have it look institutional in any way. When I'm looking at College View, I really like that as well, because you have a lot of the tubular steel panel, which is obviously ornamental and much better looking than chain link. I had originally wanted to look at the green coated chain link, or maybe even black, so that it looked like it could blend in with the environment, that there's beauty to it as well, because, you know, the kind of stainless steel chain link look is not all that pretty. I mean, however, I'm starting to think to myself now that if I would be willing to look at a lower cost chain link, if we could take that money and put it into more security features. Maybe a metal detector, maybe bulletproof glass, all these sorts of things that we weren't thinking about when we originally talked about the fencing as a security feature. Fencing is a security feature. Surveillance cameras are security features. These are just two types. There are many security features, and I'm interested in them all. Automatic locking doors that come in, you know, that the front office staff has the ingress and egress at the front. Like the school I work at, you cannot get into the school unless you come to the front office. And you go through the front office and the secretaries are there and the principal's office is behind. And then only then they have to buzz you in. They push a button and then another door unlocks that you can get into the school side. Okay, so there are many things that can be done. So I'm wondering if we went with a not so beautiful chain link, you know, is it going to save a lot of money? When I'm looking at the square footage difference, it looks like it's $65 a linear foot difference. Is that correct?
Our proposal is galvanized chain link for the interior of the campus, not PVC.
Okay, so the PVC is just here for us to look at.
It's as simple as an option, just to show you what's available, but our recommendations would be the galvanized steel 2-inch chain link on the interior of the campus.
Okay, so you're already thinking about saving that money, aren't you?
Yes.
Of course you always do. Okay. You're the best money man around, you know. I've always said that. All right, you've answered my questions. Thank you.
Trustee Westman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. When we first got started on this project, I was informed, and perhaps I was wrong, that we were going to be removing all of the old fencing. Has that now changed?
Superintendent, can you speak to that?
I'm going to defer to Dr. Conroy, but my recollection was that if existing fence, chain link in the back of the campuses were working for us and weren't damaged, that we would keep those in place. So there was portions of it that we weren't going to replace. That's the discussion I recall.
The only discussion that we had of replacing or taking down chain link fences were those chain link fences that were adjacent to existing block walls on the campus, which really served no purpose because of the gap space between them, and our staffs have to end up taking care of that. So those were the chain link fences that we were discussing removing.
And has a decision been made whether we're going to remove them or leave them in place?
We were going to remove approve them.
Thank you. I also have seen in the past on our reports that we've had representations of what this is going to look like. Some illustrative reproduction kind of thing, so that the board and the public will have a better understanding of aesthetically what's this going to look like. And I don't see those representations here. And so with the decisions that we make tonight, can we expect to see these sorts of representations at the next meeting?
Help me understand when you say representations. I think I showed those tonight.
Right, we had, in particular, I think we had one, trying to recall, of Westmont, where you're talking about a setback with a block wall or something like that. It just showed a long, straight wall,
That was a CMU wall, yes.
Right, and that was a representation of what
That was a representation.
looked like with the wall, and it's not in here, and I'm sorry that it's not. So my question is, once we decide tonight, hopefully, what direction we're gonna go, and there's a consensus in which direction we're moving with the fences, which types and where, are we gonna be able to see, and the public be able to see some representations of what it will look like, some artist representation?
And you're referring to block walls?
Well, all of the fences.
Well,
Because the public's gonna wanna see.
Trustee Russell, I provided the fencing of chain link and wrought iron. The only thing I did not show tonight, which I can show at the next meeting, or I can provide in a Friday update of what a CMU wall that we would be recommending. But every other type of fencing, you've seen it tonight and you've seen it in previous presentations. So I'm
Diagram, an illustrated picture that was created for Westmont that actually showed what it's going to look like once the wall is in place. That type of representation for all these different various fences.
Are you referring to a block CMU wall, a masonry block wall, or are you talking about chain link or tubular steel?
All of them.
Well, the tubular steel and chain link I've shown you tonight.
So it's not in place where it would be.
Trustee Westwell, anywhere on these, where the blue line is a tubular steel, which I've shown you. The red, which I've talked about, galvanized chain link, are in the front pages of the presentation. What I have not shown, and I can provide that at the next meeting if you'd like, if the board wishes, is a CMU, a masonry block wall in terms of a representation.
Right, something more like this with our property in the background of how it would appear. That's kind of what I'm looking for, so that the board, the public can have a better understanding of what this project will look like in its completion. And I understood that this is the type of thing that we would be receiving in this process. I'm wondering, A, is that correct? Are we going to receive these representations? And
so you've received the tubular steel representation in the photograph that's right in front of you, as well as what a chain link fence looks like, whether it's a 2-inch or a 1-inch square mesh. What you don't have is a block wall representation that is different than what was provided at Westmont, what you're showing. Whether it's actually showing in front of Westmont or anywhere else, a chain link fence that's shown in this presentation is a chain link fence. It's not going to matter whether it's in front of College View or some other institution, but this is a chain link fence. This is a 1-inch chain link fence. This is a tubular steel. This is what we will be looking at. That is the representation of a chain link and tubular steel. What I don't have, and we'll provide that to you, is a representation of a style of block wall that we would be recommending that meets the needs of the various comments that have been raised previously.
okay, so what I'm hearing is we're not going to get an artist representation of what it will actually look like on the property. I appreciate your answer. It's not what I expected, but I appreciate the answer. Thank you for that.
I don't know what you want.
On these various, I'd be happy to explain more for you.
Yeah,
But I don't think you're going to get it. So let's just move on. On these various chain link fences, there's several options here. One of them is they have chain link fence, and at the very top there's a bar, and then protruding from the top of that bar you have like little teepees where they bend the chain link over. They can do it like that. They can put those little bend overs underneath the bar, or they can stick those things above the bar and they twist them with a little pokey sticking out. So, are we gonna make the decision on that type of fencing as well tonight, whether we do the pokies, the under,
So you're referring to something like this, with
Those
the
are the
bar on
under.
top, like there, or something like that with a bar on top where the fencing extends above the,
correct? And then there's one more with actually pokey, pokers, I think it's that up. Right there, where they have little twisties on the top.
that's,
I think those are the most dangerous.
that's simply the placement of that crossbar in terms of how high it's actually placed. And since we are talking about safety, we would be placing it as high as we can, given the length of the pole here. So when you look at the fence here, that line right, that bar right there is simply the height of this pole here. So we raised at the pole, if you see the brackets, if they were raised a little bit higher, this crossbar would be raised a little bit higher to the top of the fence line.
Dr. Conroy, I don't think you're understanding what I'm trying to communicate to you, unfortunately, so I'm gonna do it again. There's 3 different types of fencing here. This one is on this page right here. And it's got little pokes that stick out, twisted wire that poke up on top, and if a child fell on that, they could impale themselves on it. That's one type of fencing. And if you turn the page, it has the same sort of pokes on top. And if you turn the page again, those are bent over on the top. You can't impale yourself on those, even though they stick up higher than the pole. Now, if you turn a couple of more pages back to the PVC, you'll see that they're bent over and they're actually underneath that pole. So in my perspective, looking at these 3 pictures, those are 3 different types of fencing options.
I'll let,
and I'm trying to
Mr. Meyer
understand which
answer your-
one are we moving towards, because you're making recommendations. I would hope you would know.
Well, the type that you look at right there would be most likely what we would be doing, not having the chain link extend above the tube, the steel tube at the top, right? And again, this fence is 6 foot tall. It's on campus because the front and the back, the fence between the pocket parks and at the front of the school is tubular steel. But this fence would be terminated just like that photo that you see.
So are we contemplating that all of our chain link fences that we will be installing will be like this here?
The interior fences that we would install would be like that.
And they would not have the twisty poke things on top?
Well, that would have to be a decision made by the district when if we replace sections of missing fence on the perimeter that exists now. That would be a district call as to whether we match the existing fence or install this stock.
Because the new fence we're planning to do it like this?
Yes.
Okay, that's, thank you.
Can I just have a point of clarification?
Sure.
This picture that we're looking at is PVC coated.
No.
Yes.
That is not our recommendation.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Okay,
apologize.
so I just want to be, but I understand that there could be chain link 2-inch where it's under the top bracket.
That's correct.
Is that correct? So I want to be clarify for you, Trustee Wessel, it would not look exactly like this. The recommendation that we have.
And it's my understanding, this style, but not PVC.
Correct.
Correct, that's what I understand. Thank you for that clarification. Another concern of mine was heights and setbacks. Between the pocket parks and in our school property, I think is it 6 foot or 8 foot fence we're talking about here? I think it's
For the,
6 foot.
between the pocket park and the school property?
Yes.
8 foot.
8 foot. That seems a little high to go to be separated. I think for me, 4 foot would be okay. Maybe put some bushes like I suggested before. 6 foot would be more than high enough. 8 foot I think is too high. I think that's just too high in my opinion, but you know, it's what the community wants and what the board wants. I'm just raising some issues, but you know, I can see 8 foot around our perimeter, but between us and a park.
That is our perimeter.
I understand, but when it adjacents a park, I think that might be too high for our community. I don't know. Gates. We have several types of gates here. Several types of fencing. Are we going to be able to purchase gates that match our fencing, like for the wrought iron and that sort of thing?
Yes.
And Trustee Briscoe mentioned bike cages, which are being addressed. And let's see, I have one more thing here. Oh, the setback at Westmont. The brick wall that I discussed previously with you, are we still intending to put a small setback?
Yes.
And bushes there or something?
Yes.
Okay, good. And then, let me just run through this. While I'm looking for this other thing, maybe somebody else can talk.
President Souders, I believe in the best part of the meeting.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering. Trustee Briscoe, you have the floor.
Are we going to install gates into the city parks as well as our own pocket parks?
That's the plan.
Put gates for both. And you're going to look into gating options for the ingress egress. Public nearby neighborhoods, adjacent neighborhood egress into our campuses, is that correct?
Is that the walkway area you're referring to?
Like the two walkways and did a circle view from the nearby.
Yes.
And I want to state, I think an 8-foot fence is just fine by me.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Trustee, thank you. You guys come to order, please. Trustee Clayton Tarver, you have the floor.
A couple things. One is that, yes, I agree with Trustee Briscoe, 8-foot fence, nothing less.
Yes.
Also, we have seen a lot of photos and artist renditions, renderings, I should say, of these possibilities, and I do not believe we should be, I would not want the superintendent or you, deputy superintendent, to spend any more money on artist renditions when the money can be used in other places. We have seen many photos, we have seen many artist drawings. I have seen the ones that show the fences as you would put them at the College View meeting, from the Westview meeting, and I think you've done a fine job with that, and I appreciate all the work that you have done and that our architect has done already on that issue. Please, I would suggest you save the money on no more artist renditions at this time for these two schools. Also, I am going to, though, although I agree with Trustee Briscoe on a lot, I'm going to disagree on this one thing. I actually disagree that we should use our OVSD staff to install fencing for a couple reasons. One, because they have their primary job, they have their jobs they have to get done. And when you're utilizing them in another way that is so time consuming, it will make the school district suffer in innumerable ways. I suggest that you go out to bid and that you look to have professionals that do this in a quick and efficient manner, get this job done without having our staff work on it. I would encourage you not to do anything other. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Westphal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know we've done many renditions in the past, and in the next report, I also don't want to spend a ton of money doing renditions. That's not what I'm trying to do, is eat up money on renditions. But the community has expressed an interest in the aesthetics of this, and they've expressed it to me, and I think it's important to other members in the community. So, how important is that? I'm not sure, but what I would like to see is any renditions that we've already done, please include those in the report, because myself and the public would like to see them. I do have one other question that I recall now. On our iron bars fencing that we're going to put, are we going to put a Mostrip under that as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. And that does it for me. Thank you.
I believe we have one public comment under fencing, so do you mind, Dr. Conroy, if we take that public comment really quickly?
Speaker Emily Anderson.
I'm short. Okay, I just want to just have a couple of comments since this is being brought up recently. Just some things. I know this has been such a huge debate. There's people for and against. My daughter goes to Hopeview. I recently, during school hours, it was right after the lower grades were let out. There was people coming up. There was a person coming across the fire with a big dog. No, not the school, like side field into the side park. I've had people been there days with someone with a big dog off leash which is a huge concern to me. My younger child does not like dogs in particular, and it's very scary to him. And I just see these as more reasons why fencing is necessary. I've also myself walked across the field and right back into the school, meaning anybody else could do that. I'm a parent, I was going to talk to my daughter's teacher, but still, anybody else could walk right into one of those bathrooms that face the outside and go right into the school. So I'm like, that's just a concern that I've always had with, these open. I also, while working at a school in Rossmore, they had black wrought iron in the front of the school, and they had a camera system. You can't even get on their school at all. It's fenced all the way around and have a nice black wrought iron and actually have a camera, and they can see your face before they even let you in the front gate. So this isn't the only, and you can't say, I've heard people say, it's ghetto, it's this, it's that. Rossmore is definitely not a ghetto. It's actually very affluent neighborhood district, the Los Alamitos, whatever you want to call it. It's just safety, and in this day and age with all the things that we have going on lately, it's just nice to know that for teachers' sake that people are kept out that need to be out and the kids are kept in. I've worked with special ed for years, and many kids are flight risks, such as kids with autism that elope, and it's a huge comfort for staff and teachers to know that those kids can't get out as well. So that's all I'm saying.
Quick side note, if we could remind parents to please check in at the office when you're coming on the school campus.
Yes, that too.
I know they've been open for a while, so, but we still need to continue. Do we have any more comments from the board or questions? Okay, I have a question. So these are recommendations that the administration staff and the construction staff have made, correct?
That's correct.
So what we're looking at with the 8-foot high fence and that sort of thing. Why are you recommending an 8-foot high fence in between the pocket parks and the playground area?
When we talk about fencing being the first line of deterrence, any of us adults can hop a 6-foot fence.
Yeah. Yep.
8 foot is a much more difficult height to climb, and on tubular steel, 8 feet is very difficult to get any traction to get over a fence. And so we're looking. Our recommendations are coming from the perspective of doing our due diligence to keep our schools, our children, and our staff as safe as possible.
Yes.
Okay, Trustee Wetzel?
And I'm not trying to pick a fight. I just I'm trying to vet this thing out. If an 8-foot fence is good for security, why wouldn't a 20-foot fence be better?
I think that's overdoing 20 feet.
I do too.
I think 8 feet is appropriate.
I do too. In my personal opinion, 6 feet is appropriate. So there's differences of opinion. I can jump over an 8-foot fence. It's not a big deal. I can do a 10-foot fence too. Do we think that we're going to have criminals coming over to try to abduct our children, type of thing? That's what I see in my mind.
Well, I can address.
I'm not sure that 2 feet is going to make a huge difference as to causing people to jump over a fence or not. I don't know. I'm just speculating, just like you are. I'm trying to. Excuse me. I'm not done.
We could have you guys quiet down in the audience, please. Go ahead, Trustee Westwell.
I'm trying to do what's best for kids, for teachers, and the community who pays the bill. It's not just kids, and it's not just teachers and staff and everyone. It's the entire community that's at stake here. So these decisions aren't taken lightly by me for any group. I'm looking at the safety of everyone. I'm looking at the taxpayers that have to pay for it. So I'm trying to determine what's going to be the best acceptable style, height, and all these other things for the entire community, not just one segment. So when I hear people moaning and groaning, it's one segment that's moaning, and if there was another segment here and someone said something else, they would be moaning. So I appreciate everyone's concerns, truly I do. But I'm trying to look out for all of the constituents in this district, and that's why I ask these questions. Because I don't know the answers, and I'm trying to flesh this out. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. But we're trying to get to the bottom of it. We're trying to spend our tax dollars the best, and I'm trying to ask an intelligent question because, you know, where is that safety limit where we all agree that our kids are going to be safe? Like 50-foot fence with razor and knife. You know, where do you draw that line? That's what I'm trying to decide. And that's what we're all trying to decide. So I appreciate the answer. And I'm going to be asking others in the community what they think before the next meeting. And I'll have a better understanding of this. I certainly don't want to do what I think is best, because it would be a 4-foot fence with a setback and bushes like I've talked about before. But it's not up to me. It's up to the community. Everyone in the community. So I thank you for your comments, and that'll do it. Thank you.
Trustee Clayton Tarvin, you have the floor.
So I want to make this my last comment so that we can move on to the next agenda item, because we've spent a lot of time here. I think every board member understands their fiduciary duty, but one of the fiduciary duties, or one of the duties, or the top one to me, besides watching out for our tax dollars, which I pay, we all pay tremendous taxes, right? I understand. But number one is student safety, period. I can tell you, I worked at multiple schools. I now work in Cerritos, which is 3 miles up the road from Hawaiian Gardens. It's safer, but still, we have 8-foot fences at some of our schools in Cerritos and in communities that you would think, oh, nothing's going to happen there. Listen, everybody, nobody thought anything was going to happen at Stoneman School in Florida. Nobody thought anything was going to happen in Columbine. You never know what's going to happen. And I want to make sure that our schools are the safest that they can be. And I would just hope that my colleagues would take into great consideration these things, because I may be the only one left on the board. My kids actually go to Ocean View schools. I have 2 kids. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about it not just from a board member standpoint, but from a parent standpoint and a teacher standpoint. I know that one of our trustees did go out to the community and gave out misinformation, I should say, and told parents and or neighbors in the College View community what some plans that we were going to do that weren't true. And then we had a group of individuals come back and say that they wanted to recall me, have a recall election, because I wanted to see fencing at the school sites. I don't know how many of you know that, but that actually happened, to recall me, because I believe fencing is a security measure. So I would caution my colleague when he goes out into the community and speaks with community members to make sure that this is about student safety first and foremost.
I have a question for our Deputy Superintendent. Do any of our schools currently have 4-foot fences?
Yes.
Yes, they do. And those schools that have 4-foot fences, do we have problems with intruders jumping over the fence and abducting children and that sort of thing? As far as you know?
I do know that we do have an issue with students at some of those schools, elopers who, with a 4-foot fence is easy access for them to jump over and to run off campus, which has happened. I think we need to, again, going back to the due diligence, whether it's at the school site or even the proximity of the schools that the children can come. We can't police the community, but you'll recall a couple months ago, a Springview student on her way home from school at 3 o'clock in the afternoon was molested. It can happen on the street side, it can happen just as easily in front of the school. And if we have children who can, and I'm talking about elementary school children who can jump a 4-foot fence, which has happened, then it's too short.
Yes.
Well,
The audience, please. Thank you.
the issue over at Springview had nothing to do with fences. I don't think anyone was jumping. They just walked through a gate. So really isn't apples to apples. But my point was that our schools, for as long as they've been built, many of them have 4-foot fences. And up until this point, I can't think of, and I'm not aware of any serious happenings that have occurred because of the height of the fence. I'm not saying nothing has ever occurred, but I don't think it has to do with the height of the fence. I think it has to do with the width of the gate and how open it is. And I think that's really where the issue is. Now, that's not to say we don't want to do security updates. It's not to say we don't want to upgrade our fencing. It's not to say any of that. I'm in favor of safety, like I said. My question is how big, how high, how much? And that's what it comes down to. And that's what my thinking is. Thank you.
And this is our recommendation that will be coming to the next board meeting.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So what are you looking for from us this evening as a board?
Exactly,
Just for
the
information.
dialogue, we want to present the dialogue to have an opportunity for you to ask questions and to provide the recommendations so at the next board meeting you can take action.
So you're not looking for any kind of decision made or any kind of direction given this evening? Superintendent Hanson?
President Souders, I know that you and other members of the board have a desire to have a conversation and debate about these issues, which we've had tonight. But I know you also have a desire to have smooth running board meetings. So we need a clear direction. So we just can have we don't have to continue to have to debate, and that the staff is clear on what we need to research. So our recommendation is what's up here before you. If the board tells us tonight that you want something different than this, then we need to have that information so we can research it and bring back more information. So it would be helpful if we saw, is there a consensus? Is this the direction you want us to go in? This is staff's recommendation based on cost, based on safety, based on our construction manager and our architect's recommendations, and based on our staff's recommendations that have taken into consideration comments from the public, our facilities master plan, and our budget. So this is our recommendation. If you want to go in a different direction, then we need to know.
All right, well, I think at this point in time it would be helpful to poll the board and to find out what the board's feelings are on the direction that you're currently going on, whether you're in favor of that. So you're looking at 8-foot high fences.
It's up there.
Right. That's it right there. So tubular system for the exterior with a height of 8 feet, interior chain link 2-inch, height of 6 feet, and you guys can read it up there. Trustees can read it up there. Fence perimeter of schools adjacent to pocket parks. That would be an 8-foot high system, tubular steel system. So let's go down the line. Okay.
President Souders, I would suggest to you that you ask for a thumbs up or down or a yes, no on what's there so that we don't have to have any more floor debate. There are the options. Ask us for a yes or a no. Do we support it or not? Up or down. No more debate is my suggestion to you.
Sounds good. And I will ask for that vote. Do you have a question, Mr. Westwell?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Trustee Westwell, you have the floor.
I just want to remind us that when we do a point of order, it has to be a ruling, and we have to put it into the minutes, and I didn't hear any ruling on the last one.
True. And your point of order was that that really technically isn't a point of order because we're still going in order of what we're supposed to be doing as a board. So I don't know that you necessarily mean a point of order at that point in time. I think it's more of a point of clarification or a point of.
Let's take it at that.
Did you have any more?
I did have a question.
Okay, you have.
I didn't have the opportunity to attend all of the meetings that were held at the sites. So my question is to whoever wants to answer it. The information that we're seeing here, that I'm seeing for the first night, 8-foot high and all these specifications that are in this document, have those sites, have the public seen the heights and all that? Was that disclosed to them, or is this just being disclosed here tonight for the first time?
Superintendent?
This is just being disclosed tonight of our recommendation. There's been much discussion about height of fence, types of fencing, and based on what we've heard from people, this is our recommendation. We've heard from the board, we've heard from PTO, we've heard from staff. So based on that, we have to make a recommendation, and that's where we're at.
Thank you for that, because my big concern is that we make a decision on fencing, let's say we make it 8 feet, and we put it in, and as they're putting that fence in, we start hearing people screaming at us that the fence is doing it. That's my worry. I'm hearing that's been addressed, so I'm gonna move along with this on your good word, because like I said, I haven't been to all those. As long as we don't hear from these guys as we start building this thing, then we have done the right thing.
I'd just like to say, Trustee Westwell, you've been a board member before and you currently are. You know, no matter what we do, there's always going to be people on both sides of the issue. So I cannot guarantee you that there's going to be no complaints when we put in this fence. But I can guarantee you that I feel comfortable that we've had authentic stakeholder engagement in this process.
Thank you for that. No further questions.
All right, thank you. So if we could just go down the board, we'll start with, well, we can just all do it at once unanimously or at the same time. Poll, and if we're going to poll, then I'd like to ask the question. I don't think I want to do a thumbs up. I'd rather just go down the line. Trustee Westwell, what do you think of the plan, the staff recommendations?
I'm most worried about the height.
Okay, but yes or no? You had to go.
If I had to vote today, I'd say yes.
Thank you, sir. Clayton, Trustee Clayton Carter?
Yes.
Trustee Briscoe?
Yes.
And I'm a yes too, so continue on this path.
We appreciate that. We'll bring a recommendation for your approval with an action item at the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to N, consent calendar. It's before us tonight for approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Do we have any discussion? No discussion on this one, thank you. We'll move to the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And that moves us to old business. There is none, so we're at P, new business. P1, board member vacancy, appointment of board subcommittee per board bylaw 9223 is in front of us tonight for action. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
What are we approving? I'm sorry.
The motion is to approve the appointment of a board subcommittee per board bylaw 9223.
I missed that.
Well, we can't open it up for discussion until we have a second. So
I just wanted to make
do we have a second?
a point of order.
Oh, yes.
We need to have nominees before we can motion to approve them.
I think that this is we can appoint nominees if I'm not mistaken. Before we open that into that, let's I hear your point of order. Let's open it up for discussion, and then we'll see where we go from there. Because I think Superintendent Hanson has done quite a bit of research on this.
If I may make a recommendation, I think the superintendent has something to say on this that might be helpful to our board.
Okay.
Point of order.
Yes, Trustee Clayton.
My motion is to appoint as a
Are you
board.
amending the motion?
I am amending the motion to say, appointment of board subcommittee per board bylaw 9223 of trustee Vice President John Briscoe and President Jack Souders.
Okay. You are the parliamentarian, so I'm going to defer to you on this question. We had a motion before us that had been moved by Trustee Briscoe.
I'm going to make a substitute motion then. My substitute motion is to create a board appointment of board subcommittee per board bylaw 9223 of Vice President John Briscoe and President Jack Souders.
Okay. So do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, now we can open it up for discussion. Any discussion? Trustee Wesson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am interested in serving on this board. Subcommittee, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So, Trustee Clayton Tartt.
I support John Briscoe, Trustee John Briscoe, and President Jack Souders to serve on this committee, to be able to look through the applications and to be able to vet what needs to be vetted, to be able to bring forth candidates who are seeking to fill the board position.
Do we have any other discussion? Trustee Briscoe.
So we have a substitute motion on the floor for Trustee Briscoe and Trustee Souders. We had a thought put into the table that trustee Westwell would like to insert himself into that group, but I don't hear any way to get that to happen. So the parliamentarian should suggest to trustee Westwell how he would have his name added to the esteemed group of 2 to make 3, and then we would take a vote on each of those 2 candidates for the subcommittee and be done with it and move on.
Parliamentarian, and then trustee wants to be at the floor.
My motion is as stands. It is for trustee John Briscoe and trustee Jack Souders.
I'm going to call the previous question.
Okay, we'll vote on that item then.
We're wanting to close debate.
Voting to close debate. All those in favor of calling the previous question? Oh, do we have a second from calling the previous question?
I will second that motion.
All those in favor of closing debate on this issue?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Westwell, no.
That is, motion carries 3-1 with Westwell in opposition. And now we have to vote on P1 as stands, as put forth by, the substitute motion is put forth by trustee Clayton Hardin.
I have one more thing to say.
I think we've closed debate with calling the questions.
No, we're back to the original, my
Yeah.
substitute motion.
Yes, but once you call the question, you close debate on the substitute.
Okay.
We have to move to the vote. So all those in favor of trustee Clayton Hardin's substitute motion?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 3-1. What's trustee Westwell saying? Okay, so for clarification, we have a subcommittee of 2, myself and trustee Briscoe, to look at board member vacancy. That moves us to P2, review of board governance practices. This is in front of us tonight for information. And I will speak to this. I'm glad we are actually speaking to this. So, first thing I'd like to say, as far as the reason I brought this agenda item up was because we have, pretty much since the time I've been elected to the board, had some contentious meetings and some problems with some of our governance. Some more than others. But more than anything else, I wanted to bring this forward is because I wanted to, well, I'd like to start off by thanking Trustee Westwell. Trustee Westwell, because of his diligence and adherence to Robert's Rules of Order, brought to my attention quite a few of the rules that we have sort of laid aside for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. I think we've become a little lackadaisical over time. And so I would like to thank him, thank Trustee Westwell, for bringing those to our attention. I would like to go over a couple things. I'm not going to ask that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because obviously this is a lot of things we go through. We could spend entire meetings on it. But what I would like to do is just go over a couple points that I think are very germane to our governance, and I think that I'd like to kind of issue some of my decisions on. I think we need to start following in order to make our things a little more run a little more smoothly. The first is the role of the president, and I don't know that everyone understands that completely. My role is to stay, is to make sure the meeting runs smoothly and to protect the speaker. That's one of my main roles as outlined by Robert's Rules of Order. So whoever has the floor, my job is to protect them. I apologize if that has not been the case in the past. I guarantee you that I will make it my job and protect speakers from interruption. Secondly, the other job I have is to remain impartial. I am not supposed to be take sides with any one person. Or I'm allowed to vote on motions, obviously, but I'm not allowed to take sides in any kind of debate. I'm supposed to remain impartial. That's outlined very clearly in Robert's Rules of Order. So there's a couple things that I'd like to address to that end in order to streamline our meetings and make things a little bit more fair. And I hope the fellow trustees will let me go through this. First, I've been reviewing the board policy. We had an issue the last meeting, but the meeting before that, where we had some trouble deciding who had the floor and who didn't have the floor. And again, like I said, I apologize if one of the trustees had the floor and I made a mistake. But what I would like to say from now on, and I'm addressing this particularly to the trustees, is I would like to say, you probably heard me say it already, Trustee Westwell, Trustee Briscoe, Trustee Clayton, you have the floor. That way there is no question as to whether or not you have the right to speak. That way you know exactly who has the floor. It's been heard been recorded, and I would like you to not speak unless you actually hear me say those words. That way you know that you are protected by me and by my position. And you can have it as long as you want. As many times you want. I've gone over the Robert's Rules of Order in terms of debate on a motion. In big boards, you are limited to speak 2 times on any given motion. However, there are dispensations allowed in here for smaller boards that we are allowed to adopt our own rules. When we adopted the handbook again earlier this year, part of what we adopted was the fact that we could speak as many times as we want on any motionable item or on any item brought up, on any moved item. So we are allowed to debate as long as we want, as many times as we want. However, we did not vote on a time limit. So for that, I would like to go back to Robert's Rules of Order and say that we have 10 minutes on each time we speak. You have 10 minutes to speak. After that period of time, we're going to ask that you yield the floor and that we move on to a different person. We can come back to you and you may speak again. You can speak again after that, and you can speak again after that. So I would like to limit. I'm going to limit debate in that way because we did not vote on a time limit. I think 10 minutes. We do a pretty good job staying within 10 minutes. So I don't think that's going to be too difficult for us. I would like to talk a little bit about, very briefly, decorum, which is mentioned on 392 and 393 in the book. This has been, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems we've had on the board is decorum. And so one of the things that I would like to remind the board of is the fact that you confine your comments to the merit of the question, the moved question. So if we're talking about maybe we have an action item on fencing, and you start to talk about, I don't know, cameras, that does not really address the merits of the question that's been moved, and I'm going to ask that you limit your questions to the motion that's there. And if you hear me in the audience saying that, that's why I'm saying that. The idea behind this is not to limit anyone's conversation, it's to keep us on topics that we just discussed, that one actionable item. Another thing that's a big no-no in Robert's Rules is you are not allowed to attack, or you are not supposed to attack other members' motives when they are talking. You are not supposed to say, well, this person's just doing this because of this. That is a big no-no as far as Robert's Rules of Order is concerned. I've heard comments to that effect at a couple meetings, and I think that it's something that will make our meetings run a lot more smoothly if we do that. I will be asking you to refrain from doing that if you do it. You are supposed to address all remarks through the chair. There are other decorum things in here. I'm just going to go through one more after this, but all questions to speakers are supposed to be addressed through me. And I'm not doing that as some sort of power play. That's just Robert's Rules of Order. That way, everything stays. I am basically the voice that communicates with people, and they can communicate more clearly. That way, I'm assuming is the meaning behind this. Lastly, and this is a big one, we are to avoid using members' names when discussing a motion. It is outlined very clearly in Robert's Rules of Order. We are to discuss the motion only. We are not to bring up other trustees' names when discussing a motion. We're allowed to say, Trustee Westwell, you have the floor. Trustee Clayton Tarvin, you have the floor. Or Trustee Clayton Tarvin, do you have a question? I'm allowed to use names in that case, but when we are discussing individual motions, we are supposed to not use others' names. We have done this on occasion. And I think that's where it leads to retaliatory types of comments from other trustees. And I think that, in my opinion, if we follow this decorum, and again, this is only some of it, there is more, I think our meetings are going to become a lot more civil, and I think they're going to move a lot more quickly. And I'm going to start enforcing these, just so you're aware of that. And I'll end on this. I have one more thing after this, but the idea of Robert's Rules of Order, and the reason this is so thick, and it really does read like a Bible, it just doesn't have any big gaps. It's super dense, but it's interesting because you can tell by reading it that people who wrote this book have encountered all of these problems throughout time, that they've seen all these problems in governance as they govern. And you can see that this is the 11th edition. Thank you, the 11th edition. So it has been rewritten. It's a living document. As they come across new problems, they rewrite sections of it to make sure that it fits into the new circumstances. And the whole idea, Robert's Rules of Order, is to establish order in board meetings. And I think we would all benefit from following it a little bit more carefully. A lot of it we already do. I'm not sitting here trying to berate the board in any way. We follow this already in a lot of ways, but I think that we could be a little bit, I think adhering to it a little bit more closely is going to make our meeting run a little bit more smoothly. And so I'm encouraging you to please read through it and take a look at it and kind of refresh what you already know, and then maybe find out some new things that you didn't know or didn't quite remember. And lastly, the one last thing that I'm going to bring up, and thank you, Trustee Briscoe, for raising your hand and reminding this, I am going to ask that you raise your hands fully, and I'm not doing this to disparage any individual board member. I know I ruled earlier that you could raise your hand like this. The reason that I'm changing my ruling on that is because normally in a large assembly like Congress or Parliament, the trustees or the board members would stand to be recognized. Trustee Briscoe brought this up, one of the trustees brought this up earlier. The reason that we've chosen to raise our hand here, the reason that I'm asking you to raise your hand is not to diminish you individually, but is to recognize the authority of our position and to have more respect for the position that we are in. We were elected by the people to represent large groups of people. We should be following decorum. So I'm asking you to raise your hand fully to be recognized. Again, cannot stress this enough. It is not to diminish any one individual in particular. It is definitely just to make sure that we are affording our position the respect and the reverence that it deserves. And I will end with that. If you have questions, I'm free to take them, or if you have comments, Trustee Briscoe, you have the floor.
Does your book have an author attribution on the front?
That's a couple, yeah.
And who are they?
Henry M. Robert III, Daniel H. Honeman, and Thomas J. Balch, with the assistance of Daniel E. Siebold and Schmel Gerber.
Schmel, good old Schmel. So my point is, there is no one Robert's Rule of Orders, Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Orders were invented 300 years ago. There's whole societies for parliamentary procedure, and they're all written by different people. My book has a Thomas Balch or Balk as one of the authors. If we wanted to really hone in on this, we could vote as a board and specify a specific book and a specific publication date and time as our Robert's Rules of Orders. But I'm okay with using cheat sheets, crib notes, and whatever Robert's rules we have. They differ from each other in small ways, not big enough for us to make our meetings go sideways. So this has been a nice presentation. Thank you, President Souders, and that's my comments on Robert's rules.
Thank you. Trustee Clayton-Jordan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So one of the things that is really important to remember is that the president of the body, our small 5-member body, the president is the presiding officer, and we need to yield to the president. If the president asks us to yield to him or to her, we should do that. That's what Robert's Rules says to do. And even though I currently serve as the parliamentarian, I can make a ruling. However, the final ruling is always made by the chair, irrespective of what I may say or any parliamentarian might say. The chair is the presiding officer, and the rules to be interpreted are interpreted with the chair. And we have to yield to that in those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, sir. Trustee Westphal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to look up here Robert's Rules of Order in our bylaws. I don't have time or the inclination to go do it. I'm pretty sure it says in here the latest edition of Robert's Rules of Order is the book that we go by. That's this book right here. And just as a point of information for Trustee Briscoe, the book that he had in his hand is the Cliff Notes version of this. And I just want to thank President Souders for bringing this issue up. I think it is important. In our bylaws, it is one of the things that we need to do is self-evaluate ourselves on how we're performing. And I just want to thank you as our president and a leader of this district that you recognize the problem and are taking proactive measures to mitigate it. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Appreciate that. And just very quickly, I am by no means an authority on this book, and I will continue to pour through it. And it's my hope that by the end of my tenure, I will become a much better legislator. Anyway, thank you. Let's move on. P3, Administrative Services, 2017 to 2018, second interim report is before us tonight for action.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? If Trustee Westphal, if I could just get you, and this is not to pick on you at all, if you could just get you to raise your hand, that would be great.
President Sowers, I'll do my best.
All right, thank you. Trustee Westphal, you have the floor.
Thank you. I have a question for, I guess, Deputy Superintendent, I imagine.
Yes, Deputy Superintendent, what is your question?
Is it our plan to maintain the 3% reserve minimum?
Deputy Superintendent?
That is required. Yes. And I would go over that when I give my presentation.
A couple of things that I've noted. I just want to make some notes here because this is the second interim. The 3% reserve is an absolute minimum. The governor is recommending, and CSBA is recommending that districts like ours don't maintain the minimum 3%. It should be at least 5%, I believe. We're just scratching at the bottom at 3%. We have an emergency reserve fund balance, which continues to decline. We have steady declining enrollment. We have deficit spending as far as the eye can see. And we have tons of unfunded liabilities at our doorstep. These don't bode well for the district. I've seen our budgets and our interims come by across my desk, and I'm very, very concerned because I don't see this turning around. I've heard talk that we need to address this as quickly as possible, yet we keep kicking this can down the road. And if we keep doing that, bankruptcy is what results. Not tomorrow, not next year. If we keep going down this path and you pencil it out, we end up insolvent. That's not where I want to be. The trending does not look good. On all the forecasts, all we can do is trend. We can't predict the future, but we can trend. And when I look at the trends, they don't appear to be rosy at all. They're very troublesome. I'd like to point out to this board our fiduciary duty, according to Board Bylaw 9000, number 6. Let me read it. The board will adopt a fiscally responsible budget based on the district's vision and goals and regularly monitor the fiscal health of the district. Me personally, when I continue to see all these negative trends and I don't see a plan to correct it, merely a plan to kick the can down the road, it's very concerning to me. So, because these things haven't been addressed in the interim here, I'm going to be voting no for this because I can't see us coming out of this hole. And when you have a fiscal hole, the first thing you do is stop digging the hole. And I'm afraid we're continuing to dig. We're digging less, but we're still digging. In my opinion, to turn this district around, we need to have a responsibly defined fiscal budget. And while this budget gets us here, and the state will say, well, you're okay, we can't keep going like this. We just can't. And I'm not hearing a date that we plan on turning this around, and that's my concern. I can agree with deficit spending to get us through a short period, but I don't, and maybe I'm wrong, but a plan hasn't been presented to me to get us out of this hole. all I see us is continually going down this hill, sliding into the hole, going deeper and deeper. And so that's what I want to see in an interim budget. I'm not seeing it in this, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. But I struggled with this, and I'm just not going to be able to support it tonight the way it is. I mean, what was it, a $4.1 million deficit? Is that accurate? I'll let you go ahead with your presentation. Let us know. Thank you.
And I apologize. Thank you, Trustee Westphal. I apologize. I did not realize that you had a presentation prepared for us. I thought that was last time as well. So, Superintendent.
Dr. Conroy does have a presentation that highlights and will answer some of the concerns raised by Trustee Westphal. You have a copy of the PowerPoint.
Indeed.
President Souders, trustees, Superintendent Hanson, thank you. Tonight is a presentation of the second interim budget. As we know, before the annual cycle starts with this state adopted budget in June, we have a revised budget in September. First interim, the governor's budget proposal, and today I'm here to present the second interim budget for the 2017-18 school year. The purpose of this presentation is review some budget assumptions, go over multi-year projections and the intent of those, review general fund revenues, expenses, the multi-year projections, review the encroachment contributions to restricted programs, and review our fund balance as well as review our cash flow. So the key assumptions for the way the budget is built upon, you can see here, the statutory COLA in the current year is 1.56 and slight increases in the next 2 years. The current gap funding for the LCFF is at 43.97%, and the governor's proposal for next year is to fully fund the LCFF, and that's why you see 0 percentages on the out years, because it's going to be fully funded. We have the California CPI, we have the STRS and PERS employer rates, and those are obligations that school districts are now being required to contribute on behalf of employees, which is increasing every year, and you can see the percent increases. In 2017-18, we have one-time discretionary funding at $147 per ADA, and the governor is proposing $295 per ADA for the 18-19 school year. However, upon the consultation recommendations of School Services of California as well as the Orange County Department of Education, they are recommending that we do not budget these funds until after the May revise, because there's a lot of competing special interest groups that want a piece of those dollars. And since this is only a proposal, it is likely that 295 will be reduced. We just don't know to the extent, so we did not budget it in the 18-19 school year within this budget. Last row there is talking about our student enrollment, and this is the difference from the prior year. So we have, in terms of student enrollment, 204 students less than we did in the prior school year, and you can see the out years in 18-19 we're projecting 121 students less than we currently have in this school year. Other budget assumptions, I talked about the full funding. We're projecting our ADA at 97%, and we have our attendance incentive geared to that, and currently all the schools are meeting the 97% cumulatively. As I talked about the declining enrollment numbers on the previous slide, when we look at projecting in the multi-year projections in the out years 18-19 and 19-20, as we calculate for the increase in step and column, we calculate an increase of 2% for certificate and 1% increase in salaries for classified. We've got the increasing CalSTRS and CalPERS contributions, and I'll have another slide that shows it later, as well as the increasing encroachment. So these are the assumptions that we build our budget on. When we talk about multi-year projections, they are estimates only. based upon the information we have available at the time that we're doing the budget. The numbers today will be different in a month based upon the information we would have then. We use the multi-year forecasting as a trend to develop what our future budgets will look like, so we have a reasonable idea of how the district is faring from a budgetary perspective, which means our spending plan. When we look at the multi-year projections, we're focusing on the bottom line. We're looking at our ending fund reserve, our required 3% for economic uncertainties, and any amount above the 3% that we would have available for our emergency reserves. So we look at the current. This is our current budget for the current 3 years, and you can see our revenues. LCFF revenues at $68 million and projecting to be $70 million next year. Our total revenues for the current year is 85.9, almost $86 million. 18-19, $86 million, and in 19-20, $86.7 million. There was a comment earlier made in one of the presentations about lottery. We receive about $1.2 million worth of lottery per year. It's not on this slide. I just wanted to address it in reference to the $85.9 million in the current year. Our unrestricted lottery is only about 1.4% of the total dollars that we receive for revenues in any year. So it's not significant compared to the expenses that we get. And unlike what the lottery projections out in the public and all the monies that go to public schools, we get less than 2% of our total revenues through the lottery. So it's not that significant. When we look at the adding the 2021 school year into this projection, in the blue box highlighted, that is our projection of our June budget. So we see a slight increase in total revenues over the span of these 3 years. When we look at our total revenue, 80% of our monies come from the LCFF. And as we move into the future, because the LCFF is going to be fully funded, all we will get is in the LCFF calculations the minor increases based upon COLA for that given year. 5% we get from federal, and the federal revenues, as we're looking in the future, in the next year anyway, is going to be reduced because of what's happening in Washington, and we're looking anywhere from 7 to 10% reduction in our title allocations. We have 8% in state and 7% in local revenues. When we look at our expenditure plans, you see that in the current year we've got $41.1 million of certificated salaries, 15.6 in classified salaries, and $20 million in employee benefits. And when you look at the benefits, Trustee Westwell, you mentioned a budget reduction plan. As you recall, the board just recently approved an early retirement incentive, and that is the foundation of our budget reduction plan. In the current year, moving from 17-18 to 18-19, you'll see there is a reduction in salaries. You will see an increase in employee benefits, and that's primarily the result of the CalPERS and CalSTRS requirements that we are obligated and required to contribute regardless of the staffing levels. In our budget plan for 18-19, it aligns with the staffing plan that we've already rolled out to our principals in terms of their staffing allocations for next year. And so we do have additional staff that we're reducing in the 18-19, but no permanent staff will lose a job or be impacted because of this plan. So I want to make that clear. As we look to the next 3 years, which would be our projected June budget, you can see again our expenses, they are increasing, but when you look at our salaries, they're increasing at a slower rate because we are reducing staff in the out years to align with our projected declining enrollment, which would mean a corresponding and associated reduction in staffing. So we have this built into our staffing plan. We have this built into the budget plan. And that is the foundation of our budget reduction plan. We currently spend about 88% of our entire budget on personnel, And when we look at our unrestricted budget, about 87% of our unrestricted budget is personnel. So we are very top-heavy in personnel, and we are addressing it with this plan. So I just talked about that right here. Before we even open the doors to do business, we have costs that we have to incur. And as I mentioned, we have step and column increases. And so when we look at our projected for the next 3 years, our step and column is just shy of $1 million a year. When we look at the CalPERS and CalSTRS, when you combine them, again, they are right about $1 million a year. So before we even do any business, we have about $2 million of costs that we have to incur. And the challenging part is when you look at this line right down here, second from the bottom, this is our projected increase in funding. Well, our projected increase in funding does not cover these other required costs, and we have to continually make adjustments to our budget to align that. And so when we look at the current year, in 18-19, we're looking at a net increase of revenues over those one-time expenses of $96,000. But when we look at the next 2 years, we're running a negative. We don't have any control over that. That's the funding we get, and those are the requirements that we have to fund before we actually do any business. So this is a given of the landscape that we have to deal with. When we look at our summary of our funds, we start with our revenues, and then we have our expenditures, which includes any transfers in or out, and that's our net expenditures, and that yields our deficit spending. And Trustee Westwell, you mentioned $4 million. $4.3 million is our projected deficit spending for the current year. We have a beginning fund balance of $13 million. So when you take out that 4.3, that gives us an ending fund balance of $8.3 million. And that gives us our ending fund balance for the current year is almost 9.3% in reserves. The recommended reserve level by School Services of California, by CSBA, is the equivalent of 2 months of payroll. And our payroll runs at about $5.5 million a year, so we would be looking between $10 and $11 million as a reserve, and you can see we're a little shy of that in the current year. So when we look at the next 3 years, which will be our projected June budget, again, and just focusing on the bottom line, our ending fund balance, you can see it is reducing as a percentage of total expenditures from 9.26 to 8.6, 6.5 to 3.5 in the third year out. Talked about our contributions to restricted programs, which is basically another way of nicely saying there's our encroachment. So these are the programs that we maintain, that we contribute, that the funding does not equate. So it comes out of the unrestricted general fund. $11 million for special ed, $2.5 million for routine maintenance. There's a reduction in our federal state preschool. It's actually a savings there. But our total contributions are almost $13.5 million. And that's an increase basically of $1 million over the prior year, or a 7.4% increase in our encroachment. Now, there are other encroachment pieces that we should address in the future that addresses our budget. It addresses the unrestricted general fund. It's not on this slide, but I'm just telling you this. Our home to school transportation runs at about $1.7 million a year, and that's to transport generally kids from home to school. We currently are charging $1 a day, and it by no means covers the cost of transportation. So that should be an item that will come later as an item for discussion at the board in terms of transportation. Another one we have is our fee-based preschool program. It currently is not a self-sustaining program. It's not a program that we were required to have, and the district is contributing to support that program. And when you have a fee-based program, it should be self-sufficient. But we're looking at the current year projecting that the district is going to have to support that program by about $225,000. So we need to address the fees that are currently being assessed for that that preschool program. That alone represents about $2 million that the district is providing services to the community. Our ending fund balance, so I talked about our beginning fund balance at $13 million. So our ending fund balance, that's our reserves. And here are the different components. And so when you look at all these items here in the italics, they all add up to the ending fund balance. So we have a revolving cash fund, $50,000, and that's what we deal with to do operational business and day-to-day. It's like our checkbook. Our stores, warehouse, that's the products that we have in the warehouse. Our legally restricted reserve, those are for our title programs that have carryover. We want to maintain that because they need to be spent specifically on those programs. We still have some BITSA obligations of $61,000. We have our health benefits pool of $160,000. District assignments, those are other district allocations that we've had, and then we have our 3% for economic uncertainties that we have to have, and that is $2.7 million. We have an emergency reserve. This is the amount of money that is not allocated, that is not reserved, that is not in those allocated to above that, above the 3%, which is 2.5%. When we look at the next year, because of encroachment, it has an impact on the bottom line. We've got emergency reserve of $1.7 million or 1.7%. When we look at the projected out year, and Trustee Westwell mentioned earlier, we do have a positive certification, but when we look at the last year, we're projecting to have emergency reserve of $20,000, which is less than 1%. It's way less than 1%. So we're looking at our bottom line here, but that's on top of the other reserves. If we had a crisis where we had to go in and use funds, we would use the balance of these other funds here to address any shortcoming that we would have to have. What I just presented and reviewed was a budget plan. This is what is more important. This is our cash flow. And this is our ability to function as a business and to be able to pay our obligations on a month-to-month basis. You can see the spikes, and that's where the major revenue apportionments come in, primarily January and December, and again in April. And as we look at the end of the year in June, we do have a positive cash flow to be able to cover our expenses through the end of the year. So in summary, the challenges that we have, I talked about the structural deficit. We do need to have more substantial reserves. We've talked about the economic, the 3% reserve in the out years. We've talked about declining enrollment, and does have an impact on the district budget. As we have less students coming in, it generates less revenue. And then we have to address the major portion of our budget, which is staffing. And so there has to be alignment in terms of that. In terms of future funding, there's an impact of declining enrollment. I mentioned the LCFF COLA based only into the out years, and we know that there's going to projections for the 18-19 year are positive in terms of the economic projections, but in the out years, there is the projections of a slowdown in the Prop 98 growth. On programs that require contributions from the general fund, they do have low COLA. Our encroachment is continuing. That's something that we have to address on our unrestricted general fund. And again, on the STRS and PERS contributions, there is no additional revenue stream that was associated when we were burdened with that additional obligation. So tonight, we are sharing that we have a positive certification, that we'll be able to meet our financial obligations in the current year and the two subsequent fiscal years. So tonight, in this board action, we'll be asking that you approve the second interim budget and to self-certify as positive. In between now and May, we'll be continuing the development of the 18-19 budget, and we'll be continuing the LCAP development and the year-end update relative to the LCAP for this current year. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. You have the floor.
Several questions. Under benefits, have we surveyed our employees to understand what their real actual utilization is and what their needs are? And what comes to my mind is requiring all of our employees to buy vision and dental care, even if their spouse already has vision and dental care from their other spouse, double covering. That's one example of a place to provide real benefits for employees that they can actually use. Have we undertaken that?
The survey is under development currently.
Then we have search and seek. We're required under state law to search and seek. And then we have a declining enrollment. We don't have a declining body count in our district by U.S. Census Bureau. What are we doing to search and seek and find out where all those kids are? They're in homeschool, parochial school, and private schools. Are we doing anything to find out where they are to make sure they're getting an education as we're required to do under truancy and search and seek laws?
No, we're not at this time addressing search and seek.
For truancy or attendance?
Excuse me?
Or truancy or attendance? We're just seeing what washes up on our shore, and that's as good as it gets.
Well, we do address, schools do address truancy and absenteeism.
If the student's not attending or on our enrollment list, we can't address them. Are we doing anything to search and seek or find students that aren't on our enrollment and just MIA?
No.
Pension rate, the 20% PERS was startling. Is that based on the 7% return off of 7.5% that we read about?
Yes.
And if the reality finally sets in where it's 6.5%, 6 or 5%, that number could be even more startling. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then next, income enhancements. I want to compliment you truly on trade terms discounting and your management of that process inside. It could amount to a couple $100,000 fully implemented. It's not going to fix our budget deficit, but thank you for doing that, Dr. Conroy. Paid bus ridership, increasing our paid bus ridership through outstanding outbound communication from our district to families to encourage all families to opt for $1 a day to have their kids ride the bus. Are we doing anything about that? And have we set any objectives, measurable, quantifiable things where we can see how good our communication is?
As I understand, they're being charged $1, but in respect to the amount that it's costing us, $1 a day really doesn't do much good.
If we had the bus full of kids, it still wouldn't really good. Three butts to a seat and literally 65 kids on the bus, and that
$1 a day doesn't cover the cost of transporting.
even if the buses were full or closer to full.
Even if they're full at $1 a day.
Okay, Kids Club is not self-funding. Is that because we don't have maximum participation?
We do have quite a bit of participation.
I'm not going to put you on the spot
It's
and grill you like a spit roast or something, but I've asked the question before, what is the maximum body count we can effectively, legally, and correctly handle in a kids club environment, in middle school in this case? And I still haven't heard the answer. Is it 35, 45, or 50? Or do we have to have 2 adults there, which would then cost twice as much? It's something to consider. What I did not hear from, I heard we have encroachment from our transportation and kids club. What I didn't hear was an interest in increasing participation rates to increase revenue rather than just raising the cost and price. It's just a thought. I would err on the side of doing our best to get more people to ride the buses and to get the kids club participation rate much higher, because otherwise they're going home as latchkey kids in middle school, and that's illegal and wrong, in my opinion. So,
Superintendent?
I think I just want to correct something that what Dr. Conroy was referencing was our pay preschool program, not our kids club. Okay, so
thank you, that's not clear.
Yeah, that, to be clear, it is not Kids Club, which is our after-school care program. It is our pay preschool program at OBP.
So then, for the record, our paid preschool program at OBPP was originally a way of covering some of the cost gap of the that day school, SDS, and the operation of the school site campus there with a principal effectively running a half campus, and then we provide a full campus with the paid preschool to offset. So there's some other numbers that go into that calculation that we don't have now because we've blown up the program. So there's some things to look at there.
To be clear, we have not blown up the program yet. So the program is still in existence in its same form for 2 more years.
With SDS next door to it? No, I don't mean to be mean, but it's.
I don't know what you're referring to.
The special day school and the special ed and the preschool together made a more financially viable proposition. Now we've taken the preschool out somewhere else, and it's not the same model. It's just be aware of that.
So it's, okay, I'm not aware of what the program one was, it was first implemented, but I do know that currently we have special ed preschool and a general ed pay preschool. And what Dr. Conroy is referencing is that our pay preschool is running in a deficit, not our kids club.
Okay, I could be wrong. We have paid preschool, special ed preschool, and we have special days, the SDS program, all at the same campus. But,
No longer.
no, that's what I'm saying. So that model is no longer in place. That's what I meant by blown up, because now we've separated, and so the financial model is very different. So good luck on figuring that out. But it's not the same financial model, and so the reasons to have a paid preschool are not the same as they used to be. So there's no, it says in here, no revenue stream for STRS and PERS. We do have a revenue stream for STRS and PERS. It's called the statutory COLA. I don't know where it came up that there's no revenue stream. Unfortunately for our staff, all of the money that would normally go to offset the federal government wage theft with inflation is going to go to offset the underfunded STRS and PERS program. And we saw the expected FPU CPI as a moniker or icon, 3% a year. That's going to all go to pay for the pension deficit and the increasing pension contributions. So I don't know where you said there's no revenue stream for STRS and PERS increases. The STRS and PERS are going to suck up the life out of anything coming for additional revenues in the district. Am I wrong?
Anytime that there is a mandate from the state, it is typically associated with a revenue stream, and that's what I was referring to. When the governor pushed this burden onto the schools, they did not provide an additional revenue stream to account for the additional costs. Yes, we get COLA, that is an ongoing, but that is not the revenue stream that I was referring to. There was no additional funding available to schools to take on this additional burden.
The additional burden of their lousy union-loaded boards with no spine to admit that their returns are grossly overstated, and so they continue digging us all into a hole. That board of people, is that who you're talking about?
I don't know who you're
STRS and PERS, the people up there. Yeah, so they're all political appointees. Okay, so the last thing was low COLA environment, programs that require contributions. What does that mean?
The programs, meaning we've got programs that are special ed, for instance, we have to contribute. Special ed does not always receive the same COLA that the general fund receives. So sometimes they receive less, and that's what I was referring to.
So the statutory COLA, based on the U.S. Department of Commerce, at 2.6%, doesn't always get reflected in all the programs across.
That's correct.
Okay.
Every student generates COLA, but special programs do not generate the same COLA level.
So that answers my questions. Mr. Johnson, is he in the audience still?
I'm going to have you just direct your questions.
On President's Hours, do you see Mr. Johnson? Yeah, he can have mine. He seemed to be eagerly interested in photographing the board. He can have my presentation if he wants.
He stepped out.
Stepped out, okay. Not mine,
When?
There are comments from the board. Trustee Westwell. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thought I read it here somewhere and I just couldn't find it, but I just want to make mention, correct me if I'm wrong, our labor negotiations are still unsettled at this point, and any increases have not been put into this. Is that correct?
Negotiations are ongoing and are not reflected in the budget.
Okay. And then the PERS and the STRS, they determine who they're going to invest with. We have nothing to do with that. But in your professional opinion, what kind of forecast do you see them giving us? Is it accurate? Is it overstated or understated?
I'm not a financier, so I could not address whether it's accurate or not. I could only comment on what I read from our from school services or any other consultants or advocates. So I'm really not the expert to be able to comment on that.
And, well, traditionally, they've underperformed as of late, and so if they continue underperforming, does that have a negative impact on our district?
Well, you realize that we have an obligation based upon the percentages that the governor has put onto the schools. That is our obligation that we are addressing. The unfunded liability at the state level, all we can do is contribute the dollars that we're required to contribute, and it's left to the state to address that unfunded liability. We could continue to pay more into it, but it doesn't help the district if we paid more. It would not help an employee to pay more than what their required share is for their retirement. It would not go into a pool for themselves. It would just go into the general pool. It wouldn't help anybody specific. So in terms of addressing the state-funded liability for retirement, that is a statewide issue that they have to address there based upon the pensions and the investment pools. In terms of the district, we are meeting our obligation in terms of paying our obligations on a monthly basis based on the percentage of payroll.
Okay. And we're continuing to see deficit spending. Things aren't getting better, but we've been told we need to address this as quickly as possible. So, in your opinion, when do you see us addressing our budget so that we have no longer deficit spending? How many years do you think we need to continue to deficit spend until we get to a point where we turn it around and we say, hey, we're heading positive again? How long do you suspect that's going to take, looking at today's numbers?
I could not give you a projection of how long it would take, but I can tell you that the burden of the PERS and STRS obligation on districts have created almost across the board every district deficit spending because of that. We don't get, as I mentioned, we don't have an additional funding stream to address it, so it has to come out of the district's revenues that we have to run the rest of the district with. So that in itself creates the burden. That in and of itself creates the major structural issue that we have in terms of our deficit. We're looking at $2 million a year that right off the top we don't have the additional $1 million a year just for that. We don't have the additional funding, so we have to assume that out of our revenues that we get. You take that $1 million, it changes the landscape of what we're able to do. So I can't tell you it will be 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the road. With the projections that the economy is slowing down and we're going to be limited to COLA, and at 2% COLA doesn't come close to addressing the $1 million obligation we have on a yearly basis.
So those are statutory requirements that we have no control over. We're forced to do it. We have no option. It's a done deal. We have to do it. So as much as we want to talk about it and moan about it, whine and cry, it's not going to do any good. It's going to continue to get worse, is what I see. $4.3 million deficit this time, and I suppose it's only going to get larger from there, unless we do something different. So the only way to solve this problem is to cut somewhere else, or come up with a new revenue. We've been unable to find new revenue streams to fix this. So, in my humble opinion, there's only one other alternative. You have to cut expenditures. And at some point, we need to get serious about it. And in my opinion, we haven't been serious yet. We are positive. We're open for business. The lights are on this year and the next year and the next year probably. But if any little thing happens to us that trips us over the edge, we could be in big trouble real fast. That's really concerning. I don't see us taking proactive steps to kind of turn it around. I just see it incrementally getting worse. And that's huge for me. And I don't like it. And it's big and it's scary. And I'd like to see more done sooner. I know we're not going to get there tonight. I don't think this is the way to get there with a $4.3 million deficit. So like I said before, I'll be voting against this, and I hope that we can turn this around sooner rather than later. And I'd be happy to try to help wherever we can. If my little voice has anything to do with it, or help or suggestions or anything. But this falls into your court, sir. And hope we can get that done quick. Thank you.
Trustee Westwell? Any other discussion on the board? Trustee Clayton Tarvin, you have the floor.
I'd just like to make a comment that Trustee Briscoe has a minute 30 left. If you'd like to speak, you, obviously President Savers haven't spoken and I'm using up a little bit of my time now. I'm going to reset the clock here. And I just really briefly just want to say, Dr. Conroy, thank you for this presentation. You are doing the best with the information that you have, and I believe that you are very competent and efficient, and this presentation is obviously, you put a lot of work into this, you and your staff, and I want to thank you for this. You know, the numbers are the numbers. Unfunded liabilities are an issue, but we at the school district, like I've said many times before, can't do anything about that except for go to Sacramento and lobby others who do have the ability to do something about it. I will be doing that on Tuesday. I'm headed to CSBA, or California School Boards Association Lobby Day, and I have appointments with our legislators. And I'm going to be bringing this up, and I am going to be speaking on behalf of taxpayers and talking about what we can do to get this under control. I am a public employee. I would be willing to pay more. I would, to be able to get a pension that I am so grateful for from the taxpayers. It's a privilege to get a pension, and I'm grateful for it. I think if we could do that, but you said it's not even, it wouldn't make a difference because no matter what, the state does what they do. So the only way to fix that is through legislative lobbying, and I will report back about what I talk about. Yes, Dr. Conley.
I'd like to make a comment referencing our bottom line. I shared that in the 18-19 school year that the governor's budgeted $295 per ADA for one-time expenditures that we did not budget. We're not sure if we're going to get all those dollars. If we were to budget that entire amount for ADA, this number right here and here would be increased by $2 million. So if you increase that by $2 million, this bottom line would be $3.7 million, and this would be $2,020,000, and we would have a very significant, healthy bottom line that addresses our ability to address any type of unforeseen issue. So we did not budget it because of the uncertainty of what's happening at the state. So this is a glimpse and a point in time of what we project our budget to be, knowing that we did not budget potentially up to $2 million. And so, you know, Trustee Wessel, we do take serious what we do. We have very competent people in the Fiscal Services Office that work extremely hard. They work overtime and don't ask for any remuneration. And they put their heart and soul into what they do because this is their lifeblood as well. They live here and they work here. So I'm going to respectfully disagree about your comment about the seriousness of how we approach these things. We do not take this for granted. We understand the implications of what this can mean to the district. And when we talk about a staffing plan, which I've already addressed in terms of reducing, and the burden primarily lays on the bulk of our expenses, which is personnel related, I take that very seriously. And so does everybody in the Fiscal Services Office.
Dr. Conroy, I still have the floor. However, I did yield to you, so when a legislative body like we are has, and a member of that has the floor, we can either say that we yield to you or not. I yielded to you, so thank you for that. I do appreciate what you do and the information that you gave. I do understand the complexities of it and that you did the budgeting the way that you thought it needed to be done. We do have employees that we have to collectively bargain with. We do have certain class sizes. We have, different things that can be worked with or not. I'm not gonna go into that here because I don't wanna collectively bargain from the dais. But we have, we decided as a board to have the class sizes that we do currently have. And those are written into the agreements that we have, and we have to honor those until there's a different agreement. So, we're in a difficult place, but I have all the faith in you and your staff to be able to come to us with these recommendations, and I will be voting yes this evening because I believe in your work. And now I am done. Finish my comments, period.
Thank you. Trustee Westphal, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just don't want there to be any mistake.
Point of order.
Yes, ma'am.
No, Trustee Westwell's time has been concluded.
We don't have any conclusion of time. We have 10 minutes each time we speak. So we're allowed to speak as many times as we want as per our board handbook. And each time we speak, we're allowed 10 minutes of time to speak. So the only problem would be if other members had not had a chance to speak at all, then those other members would have a chance to speak before Trustee Westphal was allowed to speak. Yes?
Point of order, point of clarification, I should say. That is not the ruling you made earlier. I believe that you said that it would be, we would have as many times to speak within a 10-minute block. I believe in Robert's Rules of Order, the maximum would be 20 minutes, period, on any question. Not as many 20-minute, 10-minute blocks as you'd like.
And I apologize for any confusion that there may have been. As I've read in Robert's Rules of Order, normally, if we were in a larger body, then each member would be afforded 2 10-minute blocks to speak on any given motion item. But under our voted upon board handbook, as well as Robert's Rules of Order stating that we're allowed to make modifications for small boards, if we allow speakers to speak as many times as they want, which we have done, then at that point in time, I'm going to revert to the original Robert's Rules of Order, which I think I mentioned earlier. I thought I did, and I apologize for any confusion, which would allow each member to have 10 minutes per time they spoke. And yes, I know that that is quite a bit. We could relatively go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. But that's, as it stands now, those are the way we have things decided. We can decide to limit speech. We can go back to Robert's Rules of Order and amend our handbook and just allow each member 2 10-minute blocks per time, and then the other thing about Robert's Rules of Order is the idea isn't to limit speech. You have the ability to make a motion to extend debate, and then if the board agrees as a majority to extend debate, we can continue debating for as long as we wanted to, as many times as we decided to extend debate. But that was my ruling based on what we have written down in our bylaws. And I'm okay yielding the floor to Trustee Westwell. I prefer to save my comments for the end. But he should have another 10 minutes to speak at this point in time, and I apologize for any confusion that there was out there. Trustee Westwell, the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to briefly clarify, Dr. Conroy, that I too appreciate all your hard work. And truly I understand that you have to work within the numbers that are given you, and that it's not an easy task. And so I just want to represent to you and your staff who did all of this hard work, that I understand you're doing this in the best interest of the district. And I just hope that you understand that there's generally 5 people up here, and we all may have different interpretations of what's best for the district and the direction we could go. I'm trying to express that to you. But I certainly understand the difficulties that face you and the district. And you have to work within the numbers that you have. And I really do appreciate all the efforts that you have done and your staff have done to try to make this happen. You can only do what you can only do. And if it's not there, you have to find a way to make it work. And you have. These are difficult times. And you've managed to do a positively certified budget, or interim budget update. And I appreciate that, and I thank you for it.
Okay, so I just have a couple questions, and I'm going to hopefully streamline this a little bit. Voting on a positive certification this evening would mean that, from what I'm reading here, we technically are positively certified out until that date that's on there.
Right.
However, when we reach that last date that's on there, we are only positive by somewhere around $20,000. That's kind of keeping us in the black just by a little bit.
When you look in the budget book that you got, in the criterion standards, and I believe it's on page 10, it talks about the reserve, and you have to meet your 3% reserve.
We do that.
And it's yes, 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 all 3 years. That is the focal point in the criterion standards that review your budget. If you meet those criteria, you meet the requirements to be certified as positive. Anything above that is your emergency reserve above that. We meet the threshold that the state has set in terms of AB 1200 to address the certifications as positive. As I mentioned, there's some caveats that we didn't include, which would just enhance our budget, but that would be on top of what we have. And so we're recommending that for a positive certification at the board, adopt that and accept the second interim budget as presented.
Okay, and then another question that I have is, you've ridden horses in this rodeo a lot longer than I have in terms of the financial aspect of what's going on here. And it seems like we're hearing, I mean, I know I've heard since I was a child that schools need money, you gotta have a bake sale, gotta have a bake sale. So have you been in situations like this before where the situation seems as bleak as it does now in terms of, I mean, I realize we're positively certified, and I'm not trying to say, and I'm not trying to belittle the work that you've done. I think you guys have done an outstanding job. My question is, with regards to this motion item, is this uncommon, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say, or has, and I realize it's feast and famine in the educational field, but in other times of famine, is this an unusual budget?
This is not unusual because we're positive, and I'm recommending that we certify that tonight. If you go back to 2007, 8, 9, when we had the economic crisis, the state made a turn in terms of their interpretations. When a school district certifies that they're qualified, that means that, like in the third year, you can't afford your budget. It was not seen as a very good thing. And when the economic crisis hit, everybody was qualified. And so the state took a different tack in terms of approaching that type of a certification, that it was okay to be certified in your third year, because we knew of how difficult and how hard the economic crisis hit school districts. So this is when we can argue $20,000, $200,000, $750,000 above your required 3%. The threshold is, can you meet your required 3%? On top of that, you see we have other designations that we've reserved in our budget. We don't have to do that. If we didn't reserve it, it would all fall to the bottom line as emergency reserve, and we would be well above the 3%. But we put designations there for specific purposes.
Okay. And then lastly, if we were to not certify this, if we were to vote against this as a board majority and we were to not give it a positive certification, what repercussions would that have with the county?
Well, if you don't certify it, they certainly won't certify it either. If we were certifying, for instance, if I brought a qualified budget, that would have an impact when we go out and sell our bonds, because that would show that we're not, we don't have a good fiscal budget, we don't have a positive certification, so the cost of going out for bond, the cost of issuance would increase, and we would receive less funding. The financial markets, they look at this, they see our numbers, they see our reserves that we have identified ourselves, and I'm referencing these numbers right here. All these numbers are self-designated. If we didn't designate them and just left our revolving cash in our warehouse and dropped everything else down to the bottom, this emergency reserve would be increased by district assignments here. These district assignments are our one-time monies that we have that we didn't budget. I could take that district assignment out and it would drop it to the bottom line, and then increase everything by $2 million, and the issue of that $20,000 is a moot point. But we put it as assignment because they're one-time monies. We want to identify that they're one-time monies that we receive from the state. They're the one-time discretionary monies that we receive, the lottery and the mandated costs. We're using them as, for the balancing of our budget. We put them as a district assignment. I could take that out, let it drop to the bottom line, and we just increased our bottom line by $2 million, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. But we're trying to be transparent in terms of how we're addressing and how we're using our funds.
Thank you. And then final question, you've been doing this for how many years? Or I have two more questions actually, one more.
17 years.
17 years, and you are comfortable with your financial expertise as certifying this budget as positive?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Wexler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So if you dropped all those numbers down like you did, and you're gonna pump up the emergency reserve, that's not gonna change the deficit number though, is it?
No, this is the amount of money that we have in reserve. This is impacted by the deficit spending. Because the more that, every time we have a deficit spending, it comes out of the bottom line. That's the only available funding source. It's like your savings account. You overspend 1 month, you go into your savings to balance it out.
I understand. And we are positive. I just want to point out that we are positive. You've done outstanding work to make that happen with the limited numbers that you have available. One last time, I'm going to point out to this board that we have a fiduciary responsibility to adopt a fiscally responsible budget, and we're to maintain the health of this district. We're supposed to monitor the health of this district. So I don't want to wait till we become certified negatively to say, uh-oh, we have a problem, because then it's too late. It's too late. I want to identify a problem early, monitor the fiscal health of the district early. And what I'm seeing is a trend that's not healthy. And I want to point this out. That's the point of my vote tonight. Otherwise, I could be voting to approve this because we're going to get by. It's positive. But my vote is going to be in the negative tonight because of the trending. In my opinion, it's not a healthy trend line. And until we can get to a positive or a flat line, that's not healthy. And I have a fiduciary responsibility to watch out for the health of this district. And I don't see long-term viability in this interim budget. And looking past the interim budget, I don't see long-term viability. I desperately want to. And I'm sure we're going to get there in the future, but on this particular night, I'm sorry I don't see it. Thank you.
Trustee Clayton Tarvin, you have the floor.
I'm going to make a motion for changing the limits for a session. So as an assembly at any session can change the limits of debate for this session only by means of a main motion adopted by 2/3 vote without notice. I'm going to make a motion that we limit debate to 2 5-minute speeches each on any motion moving forward.
For this evening only?
Yes?
I'll second your motion. Do we have any discussion? Trustee Westphal?
I don't think that's really necessary. I mean, we're here elected to debate these issues and discuss them like an adult and try to form a conclusion which is in the best interest of this district. By limiting the debate, we're not doing ourselves and the public any service at all, because there may not be enough time to adequately discuss it, and then the politics of the board may say, oh, well, we don't want to talk about it at all, so let's just move on. This board does have a means to end debate, and that's with the motion to call a question. So
I move the previous question.
Trustee Westphal has the floor. You're going to have to wait till he yields the floor.
Well, I called for the previous question.
I understand, but you're going to have to wait till Trustee Westphal finishes and yields the floor. Trustee Westphal, you have the floor again.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry. It's just concerning to me that we're not addressing this thing sooner. I want to address it sooner rather than later so that we don't go negative sooner than I anticipate we're going to go through. That's all.
So we have a motion before us. Is there anyone else who would like to? If you call the question, Trustee Briscoe, I'm just letting you know that you would be calling the question on the motion to limit debate to 2 5-minute periods of time per motionable item.
Correct. That's my motion.
It's my understanding that we could still vote to. You could still make a motion to extend debate after that, but you have to do it with each item.
Yes.
Okay. So are you calling the question?
I'm calling your question.
Okay, so the motion before us is to limit debate to 2 5-minute speeches per trustee per motionable item, if I'm.
Point of order.
If I'm hearing it correctly. Yes, trustee Westphal.
That is not what just happened. He made a point of order. We need to rule on the point of order. We need to vote on the point of order. He's going to need a second for that.
I think he called the
I
question.
called the previous question.
Right. You'll need a second.
Oh, yeah,
Then we'll vote on that.
that's true. We would need a
Second.
Okay, now we have a motion to call the question. So let's go on motion to call the question to end debate, and this would be ending debate on trustee Clayton Tarvin's motion of limiting speech on further motion items to 5 minutes per person for this session. So let's vote on calling the question. We have to vote first. He does have the floor. Okay, so all those in favor of calling the question?
Point of clarification.
Oh,
Aye.
yes, point of clarification.
Aye.
That takes precedence over the vote. Go ahead, point of clarification.
Can you please explain to the board what the ramification of this vote will be?
Yes, sir. So the ramifications of this vote, now let me clarify with you. Do you mean the vote to call the question? Or do you
Vote
mean?
that we are about to take right now.
Okay, so right now we're just voting on whether or not we want to call the question and end debate on trustee Clayton Tarvin's motion to limit speech to 2 5-minute periods per motionable items for the remainder of this session. So all this will do, this will end debate. Calling the question on this will end debate on whether or not, on the motion, on trustee Clayton Tarvin's motion to limit debate.
Point of clarification, is it just this item or the remainder of the evening?
For the question, it is for just this item.
Okay.
No.
That's not my motion.
Remainder of the evening.
No, but you're ending debate, but his question is going to end debate on the motioned item that you've made. And then we would have to vote on your motion to limit debate to 5 minutes. You see what, to 2 5-minute periods per trustee for the rest of the motions. Do you see what I'm saying?
No.
Okay, so trustee, you made a motion to limit debate for the remainder of the session to 2 5-minute intervals per trustee per motion, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and then you made the motion, I seconded it to open it up for discussion. Trustee Westwell raised his hand to discuss the motion, and then we started to discuss the motion. He had the floor, he yielded the floor. Trustee Briscoe made a motion to call the question, so that would mean we would move straight to the vote we would have to vote to call the question, and then we have to move to the vote to approve or
The main motion.
yes. Which
Yes.
is not the motion that we're on now, which is not P3. We aren't even addressing P3. We're just addressing your motion.
Yes.
Okay, do you understand?
Yes.
Okay, great. So now we have before us a vote to call the question, ending debate on the motion that trustee Clayton Tarvin has put forth. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So the call the question passes 4-0. So now we move to trustee Clayton Tarvin's motion to limit debate to 2 5-minute periods, 2 5-minute commentary periods per trustee per motion for the remainder of this session. Okay. Are we clear? Okay, great. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Westwell, no.
Oh, so the motion carries 3-1 with Westwell in dissent. So since, if I'm not mistaken, since we've had our 5 minutes on each of these here, that would end debate on this item here, and we have to move to a vote on P3. And then from here on out, we're gonna have 5 minutes each to debate on each, or to comment on each of the things that are here, all right? Anyone see a problem with that? Great, okay, so we're gonna move to the vote for P3. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Westwell, no.
Okay, motion carries 3-1 with Westwell in dissent. And that brings us to P4, Administrative Services Independent Contract Agreement between Ocean View School District of Orange County and STRAC for as-needed pupil transportation is in front of us tonight for action.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, it's open to discussion. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. No one dissent. That moves us to P5, Educational Services Agreement with Ocean View School District of Orange County for Speech Language Pathology Services. That's in front of us tonight for action. We have a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries 4-0. Moving us to P6, Educational Services Cal 200 versus San Francisco USD et al. End of semester report is in front of us tonight for information. Okay, we'll move on. Moving us on to P7, Educational Services Independent Contractor Agreement between Ocean View School District of Orange County and CGI Professional Development is in front of us tonight for action.
I'll move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Trustee Westwell, you have the floor.
I don't care who answers this. Looks like we're trying cognitively guided instruction. And I'm curious as to why we haven't tried CGI sooner.
I'm going to go with Assistant Superintendent Bretlinger because I have a feeling she has the answer to that question.
We have gone with CGI sooner. HostView has been involved in CGI, and so we are expanding that with some additional teacher training.
How many teachers are currently trained?
I don't have that number. I know how many are moving forward.
Okay, and last question. Once these, I guess it's up to 25 teachers get trained, are they able to train other teachers?
Yes.
Terrific. No more questions.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Moving us on to P8. Human Resources Proposed Ocean View School District Calendar for 2018-2019 is before us tonight for action. I will move.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes.
Trustee Westwell, you have the floor.
I apologize. I didn't do this item as thoroughly as I normally do this other stuff. Did anyone look on here to make sure that we're not overlapping any major holidays, like Jewish holidays and that sort of thing that we have in the past? So we've avoided all that stuff.
Superintendent?
In regards to Jewish holidays, yes. And any other major religion holidays, we have a calendar that we consult.
Okay. Okay. No further questions. Thank you.
No further discussion. We'll move to the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. That moves us on to P9. Human Resources Public Hearing on the initial reopeners for negotiations between California School Employees Association and its chapter number 375 and Ocean View School District for the 2017-2018 school year is here tonight for public hearing. I will open up the public hearing for 1 minute, starting at 9:32. Public hearing is closed at 9:33. And that moves us to Q. Any other public communications to the Board of Trustees? Clayton Tarvin?
First speaker is Ricardo Martinez. Ricardo Martinez. Next speaker is Chris Epting.
Thank
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Chris Epping. I want to briefly clarify something. Earlier in the meeting, Trustee Tarvin, you said that the people leading the recall was in regards to a fence issue. I didn't remember it that way. So I actually, during the meeting, contacted some of the folks that did that. And they asked me to read this statement. In regards to the recall, the fence is not the issue. Clayton Tarvin is the issue. Like City Council candidate Ron Sterrett, we also consider her a danger to the community due to her deep dishonesty and using her role in the district to advance her radical political agenda, along with her numerous attacks upon private citizens. So I just wanted to clarify that for you. The reason I came was to address some of your more recent social media meltdowns where you attack people for criticizing you or challenging you, but not just attack them. You define what they do as stalking and harassing and attacking and all these things. I just want to remind people this is not stalking right now. You're an elected official. You have a right to do this. If people want to ask you about who paid for a certain weekend at Great Wolf Lodge, they can ask that. There may be nothing to it, but they can ask that question and shouldn't be attacked by you. If they want to ask you about these over-the-top recollections of yours with zero detail regarding shootings at a school, they can ask you about that, and you've provided no detail about it for the record. Nothing. And there is not one media note about what you called tonight countless gunman incidents. But the one that really got me was recently, and you all have copies of it, you went online and you stated about me, and this is your CPRA thing too, with each one costing $2,000. By the way, if that's true, you should all be thrown in jail for throwing taxpayer money away. $2,000 per CPRA request is outrageous. And it's, I think, another lie of yours. But you said about me, if each CPRA request costs an estimated $2,000, then this will cost $800,000 to comply. This is how this man, meaning me, who says he is running for OVSD school board in November, I have never said that to anybody. Nor have I decided to run for school board. So I want to ask you tonight, what gave you a right to announce to the world that I am now a school board candidate? I would like a retraction tomorrow morning within 24 hours on the OVSD website from you, and I would like to ask you tonight after the meeting what your source is. My wife asked me if I was running. Friends called to ask me. People that want to invest in a campaign for me to replace you contacted me, but I have made no decision to do so. So can you please tell me this evening why you would feel free to go out and state that I'm running for school board? That's a lie. You know it's a lie. And I ask you to please be responsible tonight, retract it, and let people know you were wrong. You either lied or misled. It's one or the other, okay? This is not attacking you. Don't go home and cry on Facebook tonight you're being attacked. This is called holding you accountable. Thank you.
Chuck Johnson.
First of all, I'd like to apologize for my outburst. It was inappropriate. My name is Chuck Johnson.
Thank you.
So I would like to apologize for my outburst, but nobody calls me a liar from the dais, Gina. I spent this afternoon in Hawaiian Gardens and at the Lakewood Sheriff's Substation. I've talked to crime analysts. I've talked to the city clerk from Hawaiian Gardens. I've talked to longtime sheriff's deputies. Nobody has any information whatsoever to substantiate your claims, Gina. Okay? So you want to sit here and call me a liar like you did to Brianna Lalama? Brianna Lalama came up here and described her abuse at the hands of Victor Valadares. You used nuanced speech to call her a liar. You're not going to do that to me. You understand me? It's not going to happen. Okay? I have an appointment with a crime analyst at the sheriff's substation again later this week. We're going to get to the bottom of this, and I will publish my findings shortly. So if you want to come clean and tell people that you were just embellishing the truth, or maybe kind of like prettying it up a little bit about your experience in Hawaiian Gardens, and by the way, the city official in Hawaiian Gardens did not care much for your characterization of Hawaiian Gardens as a crap hole. And they're more than happy to work with me to disprove your claims. Once I showed them your statements on social media, they were mortified. They want your head on a stick. I'm going to give it to them.
Ooh, nice threats.
Nice threats.
We can please have order from the audience. Thank you.
Jason Bozarth.
My name is Jason Bozarth, and I fully understand why each person who comes up to this podium does have a right to do so. But it was Trustee Westwell who reminded me of our civic obligation to include, what did he refer to it as, a nexus of education. In the last few comments, I would ask, where is that nexus to education? I accept being held accountable to a higher standard. But in this instance, I see the debate moving away from the business of the district into lurid, unsubstantiated, pointless accusations that have nothing to do with either this district or any nexus of education. It is distracting, destructive, and toxic nonsense that is better left to some internet forums or attention-seeking trolls. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Clayton-Tarvin.
That concludes the second public comments.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to our future agenda items as requested by board members. And we will, well, we'll just open it up. You guys can, I'm gonna call out. We usually just open it up. We'll just open it up. Okay. Trustee Westbrook?
I heard mention tonight from many people about the playground equipment in Pleasant and the computer lab in Pleasant for the modernization housing that we're going to do over there. And I didn't realize that we weren't addressing those things. I don't know if we are actually. So I'd like to have an agenda item so that we could talk about this stuff, because I think they had a lot of valid points. And I don't want to do wrong by these folks. And so I think it's important to have a discussion about the playground equipment and the lab, computer lab over there. And we'll do this for the other interims too, I guess, when we do it. But I think it's important we should talk about it. Also, I would like to talk generally about property development in our district at some point. And those are the two things that I have thoughts on today.
Hearing none others, I'm going to move on to S. Board of Trustees Roundtable. We'll start with Trustee Clayton. Well, then we'll start with Trustee Briscoe again.
Full control of the microphone. Just a few things. One, a Kiwanis member, former president of Kiwanis of Huntington Beach, has offered to donate $30,000 worth of bicycles to our district. They're bicycles that can collapse in half if you live in a condo or an apartment and not in a luxurious 3,000 square foot house. You could take it upstairs and keep it safe in your home and not have it chained to a porch or something outside where it could be stolen. They're fantastic bikes. We're going to work immediately with Mr. Mike Vermette to get those bikes into our possession, and we're going to work on a program, to my best knowledge, to make Ocean View School District a bike-friendly and bike-user district. That would include bike cages that are locked and having a bike cage in the first place. Golden View, for example, has a little wall that's 4 feet tall. That's it. The bikes sit in there all day long for somebody to steal. Fortunately, we don't live in a high-crime community, but bike cages that are locked and secured, safe school routes mapping so families and children know the correct routes to ride their bike or razor or walk to school. We would want to have encouragement of children to ride together in a group, a cohort from a neighborhood as opposed to one at a time. And requirements at the school site for locking and securing those bikes, especially in middle school where there's a lock, that every bike must have a lock on it. If the bike does not have a lock on it, it will be taken to the principal's office, and the student will have to pick the bike up and deal with a detention and parental discipline. And the bike cages will have to be locked
every day and unlock so the bikes are secure. There's a lot of moving parts to a bike program. We don't have a bike program right now, to my best knowledge. So this bicycle donation should trigger an enormity of good physical health and bike riding. I'm anticipating and hoping, Dr. Hanson. Second, the Kiwanis Club of Huntington Beach is having an adult spelling bee. An adult spelling bee. And there'll be teams of 3 adults competing in the spelling bee in costume. And if they make a mistake, they can actually buy back their error. It's all for the Huntington Beach Children's Foundation that goes mostly to Ocean View School District. The Kiwanis donates a lot of money to Huntington Beach schools, our Ocean View School District. So there'll be a spelling bee coming up. You should all plan on attending. It'll be a raucous, good fun, and be fun to see adults. I've been forced by my wife, who's a Kiwanis member, to be member of one of those teams, and President Souders has volunteered. Now we're looking for a third trustee, Clayton Tarvin. And last, I want to recognize a great use of words, lurid nonsense. Lurid nonsense. Who has used lurid in a sentence before? Well, Mr. Bozarth has. Thank you for elucidating and educating us.
Thank you. Trustee Westwell?
Okay. I went to the Robert Mayer Leadership Academy last month, and I'll be going shortly here next month, in a week or two. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Clayton Tarvin?
Okay, so I did attend the POW Square, to the POW 2 meeting with our classified leaders and the administrative leaders, and it's just wonderful to see that occur. That's modeled after a similar a PAL group that is an ABC Unified School District, and I am one of the charter signing members of the original PAL that occurred back in the late 90s. It's a great thing to have a partnership of administration and labor so that you can work on difficult things like budget and a myriad of things. You can work on these things together without having an adversarial interaction or relationship. I want to thank the honor band teachers and students that were here this evening to entertain us. I spoke at a gun sense rally, or a gun control rally on President's Day, and it was well attended, and I was proud of the things that I said, and I stand by every single word that I said there as the truth. Also spoke at a Women's History Month rally the other day, and also am very proud of the things that I said about standing up for women, children, and the voiceless in our community. We are going to be having the Optimist Club Oratorical Contest this coming Monday. I'm really excited about that because I happen to be an Optimist Club member along with Dr. Hanson, and I happen to know that Trustee Briscoe is going to be joining, and I think Trustee Souders is going to as well. So I'm really pleased that we're all getting involved in that group. And I'm really happy about the banquet also. That's something that's been going on for 30 years where I work, where the classified, certificated management all come together at the end of the year for a banquet to celebrate your benchmarks of being employed in the school district as well as retirement. So it's really wonderful to see that come to fruition. It's always something I had dreamed of happening here in Ocean View School District. So thank you to those of you that are making it happen. And again, lastly, I'm going to say that everything that I had posted about my experiences in Hawaiian Gardens are 100% true. Unfortunately, crime is a serious problem in Hawaiian Gardens, whether the city council wants to talk about it or not. And by the way, the city council has nothing to do with the governing of what happens at schools. It's the ABC Unified School District, which is a state agency and has no answering to, and the city has no jurisdiction over the school district. And it's unfortunate that we have to be in lockdowns, and at one time they were happening every couple weeks, unfortunately. Again, I'll go back to what my colleague said. I worked with Gina during the same period of time. Not only is what she's saying true, but she's not even mentioning all the other incidences, and I could bring in many other letters from my colleagues and from the principal as well to be able to validate that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll keep it short. Once again, thank you all for sticking with us to the bitter end. I see some new faces out there. I'm wondering if you're going to submit some documentation for candidacy. Have we changed your mind to join with us?
Nope.
Okay. Well, the spelling bee, I did agree to assist or to participate in the spelling bee, but you did not mention costumes when you asked me, so I'll still participate though. But I'm not dressing up as like a bunny or anything like that.
As a graduate.
That I can do. Bikes, yeah, the bikes. I gotta say, the bikes that you had awarded to the school, trustee Briscoe, or your friend did, are phenomenal. I thought when I met with Dr. Hansen, I thought maybe she was biking to work. The bike tucked away in the corner, and I kind of wanted to see her leave for home. But it's actually they're beautiful. They have Shimano parts. I mean, they're really, really, really nice bikes. And he's right; they do collapse, and you can store them in different places. And I was a little jealous. Nice bikes. The banquet. I am looking forward to attending the banquet again. We had one last year, and I thought we had CSEA and OBT at the last one. Correct? Yeah. It is a wild time. It's nice to see our employees just sort of let down their hair and go crazy. There's some good dance in there, and who knew Kathy Tryon was so funny? I mean, she's hilarious. For those of you who work around here, you probably already know, but I had no idea. And with that, I'm going to bring us to the close of the meeting. I want to thank you all again for coming, and I would like to thank the board. I think this went, although we did go long, I think we went fairly smoothly with regards to working through some of the issues. And we still have work to do, but I applaud you for your work.
Move to adjourn.
We're kind of close. Okay, thank you. So we're going to move into that. We do not have closed session to go back into, and we won't have to return to open session. So now we are at the adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0, and we are in adjournment at 9:51. Praise the Lord and pass the